Audio live.
Mr. Sean Neal, I've missed you. I've missed you so much.
Oh, I missed you too.
Things are weird, dude. Things are
I gotta
weird.
fix my hair. Hold on, I gotta fix my hair, right? I gotta look good for this.
Yeah, I'm
This
sorry.
is
With the pandemic, hair and makeup is hard to come by these days.
this is I'm saying, yeah. I
Yeah.
was expecting to have a makeup person
No,
show up, but I guess you're not that highfalutin
I
yet.
didn't pay the bill. I didn't cover the contract. They didn't
There's
show.
no there's no amount of makeup that would fix this, so it doesn't matter.
We usually
Uh,
don't get too into the details on that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Good,
let
good.
it go.
You're not gonna just get like hyper zoom in on my face
Not
or
at all.
anything.
Not at all.
I even got it's their hobby lights. I wish I said I had like really cool lighting, but they're literally the lights I use to build models with, and so I just tilted them upwards. So that's what I'm using for my this incredible light that I have going on.
I've gone a bit stupid, and I can't hold myself back from going stupid. I have a $200 Elgato key light.
Wow,
I'm
there you go.
using a Razer Kylo or Kio cam that has a ring light on it. I've got a
Oh,
big ass studio light over there, and I've got a couple other lights on the ground just to hit the green screen because you see a green screen behind me, and the stream sees black.
oh, that's right. Look at that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get, I got to get the green screen good, and you still see it on my beard a little bit. That's because I don't have backlight, appropriate backlighting. You can see it on my
Yeah,
fingers. Yeah,
but
like,
you're picking up you're getting rid of all the shadows on your face, which is what the lights are supposed to
yeah,
do.
and
Yeah,
it's still a little like it's nice and peachy. It's a peachy clean, but you can see like on my hand right here, that's blown
yeah,
out.
it washes out. I
Yeah,
was trying to see if I could adjust because these lights have like the different settings for colors, But let's see. Ready? That one made it all kind of orangey. That's like a bright white one. That's kind of a bluish one. Maybe the orangey one makes me look a little more natural, huh? Or do I look like I'm bathed in orange light, which is basically what's going
it
on?
looks good to me, sir.
Wow. You are so high with the compliments today.
So, Sean Dynamite. I was QA'd in mass for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. I don't even know how long. You came on to MAS and you were TERA PC product manager. There came a point where we needed to get you a little bit more help. You were looking for an associate product manager, and I was like, I don't want to work for any of these other product managers right now. Thank you, Lucky. So I might as well do it. I'll work for myself versus work for any of those other guys. So I jumped in and I found out I fell in love with you. You are one of the most passionate product managers I've ever worked with. A lot of the other product managers are kind of dry. They just approach their game like it's their job. But you played the game every day. You were
Hmm.
very passionate. You were very into it. You were very energetic. And I absolutely appreciate it. And I always look back on that like, this is the standard. This is the model. This is what I want to work toward. I want to have that passion. You're that guy. I'm super happy that you're going to chat with us, and I miss working with you. I'm very happy we're doing this.
I am extremely excited that we're doing this. I'm proud of my time there. I'm proud of the friendships. I have to say this might be the only job. Now it's been a year since I left en masse, and I think this is the only job that I can think of at the top of my head that I have maintained like my friendships with the people that I worked with there after I've left. You and Matt, and I talked to Anna a few, as often as I could. Occasionally, I ping Matt once in a while. Oh, there's a bug. Hopefully, it doesn't fly in front of my mouth or something while I'm talking. Um, yeah, I loved working with you guys. I miss all of you so much. It's so, and then now that we're in this weird state, now I just think like I can't even imagine what working in that environment would have been like when you guys had to go home in March. Probably it was at the same time we probably locked down was March. Uh, I just can't imagine having to do the job that we were doing from home. Like, I mean, obviously there were times when we did things from home already, but yeah, so it's super crazy for me to like go back. And I've been watching the streams lately, trying to like kind of, I knew we were going to do this, and I was kind of like, man, I have to try to remember all of the stuff that we did because it really was like a time of us packing everything we possibly could into it. And thank you very much for those kind words, though. I wanted to say that. That's very nice of you to say, and
That's
I appreciate it.
kind of the point why I'm doing these things, right? Like we left, and it's people get laid off, people quit and move on, but that's a face to face. You see them. There's that last day, right? Even if it's a layoff and you don't know 5 seconds before all that happens, there's hugging, there's goodbyes. This, like, the EME shut down. And I was in Oak Ridge. I wasn't even in Washington.
Yeah.
So now it's like I want to make sure I have closure. I was at EME for 10 years. I want to wrap it up, and I want to leave a little bit of legacy, and I want to tell the players what it was like. And so these interviews are for that purpose.
Yeah. That's really impressive too. Like, the amount of time. I mean, the people you saw, so many changings of the guard there, and I witnessed it from outside because, and we can get into that in a little bit, like how I ended up there. But like, I had roots with EME many years before I actually started working there, just because the people who were there, the people who started it, were people that I worked with, people I moved to the state with. And then I actually had applied to a job before TERA ever launched back in I think I interviewed in 2011, like January of 2011. It was a few months before I actually left the job I was working at the time that I interviewed for to go to PopCap. But yeah, so that's got to be super strange, because you're right. You do get this, we had where I'm working at now. I'm working at Funko now, and at Funko we also were not immune to the layoffs and the furloughs originally, and then eventually some of those turned into layoffs later on, and it was exactly the same thing, right? Like, on a layoff day, it sucks, but like, you don't have that last day that, hey, let's go grab lunch. We're gonna take you out for lunch on your last day, or any of that. It was like, we're all on like video chats going like, hey man, sorry, like, I'll talk to you soon, take it easy. It's just like so impersonal and weird, and it almost leaves you with more survivor's guilt. I found I've been through many rounds of layoffs. I made it through, and the survivor's guilt is crazy. And I've been laid off many times too. That said, that just comes with working in the game industry, I think. But having lived through it and then surviving it, and you have that survivor's guilt of everybody who you saw get laid off. But in this case, you don't even get to do anything except like internalize it and just kind of sit at home and try to write them on LinkedIn and say, hey, sorry about what happened or whatever. Like, I started reaching out to everybody there as soon as, I think I talked to you. I reached out to Matt. I reached out to David Whitfield. A bunch of people that we were working together with, just to see, like, are you okay? Are you lined up? Are you getting taken care of? It sounds like from everything that I understand, everybody was, it wasn't a contentious, horrible issue. I mean, it's terrible that it happened, but it sounds like everybody's landing okay. Nobody's sleeping in their car outside my house yet.
Well, so, I mean, I turned to Twitch to be a content creator, so it's not all good.
Yeah.
some of us are making odd decisions.
Yeah, well, there's worse things you could be doing.
I'm trying to start the OnlyFans page. I mean, that should go up here pretty soon.
To say, I this is terrible, but I went to eat at a certain chicken restaurant, a chicken sandwich restaurant that a lot of people don't agree with because of their politics, but I agree with their chicken.
Oh, so God,
I went to eat there.
So good.
And I went to eat there, but there's one on North Aurora, and like, it's smack dab in the middle of, like,
Yep.
If you're looking for a date, that's where you can go to pick up one. And usually I would go there. We go there at like lunchtime. So it's usually not that big, you don't really see much going on. But the other day I took my son and we went to go there at like, no, he wasn't with me. I was by myself, and I went to go at like dinner. It was like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I'm pulling out and I get stuck at the stop sign out there. And there's like, I had like 3 people like knocking on my window, and this is COVID, mind you. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. It's like, crack my window. It looked like something from like National Lampoon's Vacation. I like just cracked my window like this far. And they were like, and it was just like 3 separate propositions. I was like, this is not really. So you could be doing that.
Could be doing
hang out outside the chicken restaurant.
We'll see how all this goes. So when I first started doing these, I think we did a couple. And I missed a beat, but now we've corrected. So the first thing that we need to establish is your gamer credentials. So
Yeah.
let's kind of dive. Let's take a moment, dive deep. What were your
Yeah.
first games? Where did you start?
All right. Well, first games I ever played. I'm an old man, as I think a lot of the people that you're probably interviewing are. So my first games that I remember are I literally remember my father bringing home our first Pong machine at the house and we playing Pong, where you had like 78 modes of two sticks with a ball going between, but they would call it like this one's tennis, this one's baseball, this one's basketball, and it's like it's the same thing over and over. It's a ball bouncing back and forth between two sticks. But my first like falling in love with a video game was when I got my Atari 2600. That was like it changed my life. Like it became the thing that I did every day. It became the first adventure game I ever played, being Raiders of the Lost Ark on the 2600, where I couldn't solve it and you had to write into the company and have them send you a piece of paper that had the solution on it to tell you how to solve. Well, one side had hints, 3 hints, and the other side had the solution to tell you how to beat the game. And I tried the hints, and I would think I guess I must have been 9 or 10 years old, and it was just like, looked at the hints and was like, nah, just give me straight to this. I just want to beat the game. That's all I want at this point. But so yeah, it started there, and then from there there was kind of a lull. And I'm trying to think of why that lull existed. I think I was still playing the 2600. 2600 was starting to go through like these iterations. There was like the 5200 they tried doing that had like the double graphic speeds or whatever. And then there was like a weird computer version that was kind of mixed in the middle there somewhere. And then I got my first computer, which was I guess it was 1983. It was like a Texas Instruments TI 99 4A. And it had a couple games. There were like these weird rip-off versions of like Dig Dug that was like some weird mouse game. And there was a big Amazing, which was a mouse trap game where there was like a mouse maze. But what that led me to more, the games themselves were great, but I started learning how to program on there. So I started learning Basic and Extended Basic and that opened up computer gaming to me, because then I started writing my own little small programs that would say like just stupid, goofy guess yes and no randomizers and things like that. And then I got a Commodore 64, and that was it. I got Bard's Tale for the Commodore 64, and I was like, all right, this is it. This is the last video game I'm ever going to play, because this is the greatest game that's ever been made. And that was cool. But then my friend had a Mac and introduced me to Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar. And I was playing Dungeons and Dragons pretty heavily at the time as well. And so I was so into Ultima and got so wrapped up in it that I actually turned it into a campaign to play with my friends. I just took all of the maps and all the things that came with the, what is it, like 20 floppy disks or whatever that game came with originally, and made my own D&D campaign out of it, and ended up being a very fortuitous thing for me, because eventually I ended up working for the man that made that game when I went to NCSoft. So then there's like a long break where no games. I think Windows, like you know, the Windows PC thing, it all happened. I was in the Army and doing other things, and wasn't really being exposed to a lot of what was going on in culture, because I was kind of locked away in the military for a bit. But somewhere in there, I discovered Myst. That was the next big milestone game for me, was Myst. And I was obsessed with the puzzles and the puzzling of that game. And then another huge base. So if you notice, I wasn't part of the Nintendo revolution. The first Nintendo I ever owned was a 64. I never owned a NES or a Super NES. When the Super NES came out, I was in the Army. And I had a friend. We had one guy on our floor in our barracks that had one, and I remember playing Sim City on it. That was the only game I remember playing on, and like that crappy version of Mortal Kombat. But I started getting into arcade, and then of course, through all of this, arcade games were always a thing. But I never had a lot of money, so arcades weren't the thing. I would hang out at them, but I never had a lot of money to play them. So, and then let's see. So then I went to a 10-year stint where I was touring in a band, And when that ended, that's another period of like not really being exposed to a lot of what was going on in technology, because I was like touring 8 or 9 months out of the year. So I wasn't doing anything but living, breathing, and eating music for about 8 of those 10 years. But when I stopped, that's when I got into, and somewhere in the middle of all that, I discovered UO. Ultima still being a thing that was creeping up on me because of my memories of Ultima 4. And I didn't play any of the other games in the Ultima series. I think I might have played 3 at one point, but it was nothing like 4. And so it just wasn't as good to me. But I didn't play any of the other games. But then UO, so that was my first online multiplayer game. I mean, kind of like, for most people around that time, between that and EverQuest or was it RuneScape? Was that the other one, right? Like those were kind of the big ones that everybody was discovering. And then again, didn't realize all these things that I was doing was just changing the trajectory of where my career would finally end up, and I would be working in all these games and all these things at the time I thought were these extravagant luxuries, to be able to afford a computer that could play one of these things and stuff like that, just became commonplace in the world, and I was swept up in that too at the same time. So it's kind of a golden age. And then played WoW, got into WoW. I actually started playing WoW about 4 months before Burning Crusade came out, and that was through, because I started working at NCSoft at the time, and that was who I discovered it through. People at work were playing it, and I got in and played with them. And then I actually got a job working in games, and then after that I stopped playing games. No, I'm kidding. I began playing all the games I was working on, and it became very almost siloed. I mean, I see like your stream sometimes, and I get very impressed by people who play games, who work in games all day, work on a game all the time, and then when they go home, they still have the wherewithal to play other games besides that game, which I think is really important. But I definitely had periods of burnout in my career where I was playing the game I worked on, and that was about it. I really didn't have much other room in my life for anything else. So yeah. So I've been playing games for a long time. I would say since about 70, it had to have been 79 or so when I started. I think when we got that Pong machine in my house. So a couple years.
And then you've got a pretty unique relationship with your son. You're both playing Fortnite together.
Oh yeah. Just so in the most recent 2 years, we still play too. In fact, we were just playing today. It was a little bit ago. We were playing the new Fortnitemares thing had come out. This whole season is Marvel themed, all Marvel, and so you hooked me because the game like I said, the game I work on is also Marvel, and so I'm steeped deeply in that right now. And so it was just really cool, especially being on the inside and knowing how it is to work with one of these large companies like that on a product for them. And the relationship that is, to see like a game, how they pull that stuff off. When we were working on TERA, for example, we did the Attack on Titan promotion, right? That was the cross promotion. And I know that there was one for Train to Busan, I think, for closers that followed after my time on there. But I believe that was still coming on there at some point. And then there was a couple other ones. What other ones? Didn't we have some other?
We did
movie
Hello Kitty
tie-ins
before you got there. We did
Attack
on Titan. We did the PUBG. I think that was all we did for TERA.
Okay, yeah, the PUBG one. That's right. So yeah, working from that side. So we play. So he and I play that. So he discovered Fortnite. I bought a PS4 for him because he had. I think I owned a PlayStation 1. I owned a PlayStation 2. I owned a PlayStation 3 for a short time. In fact, now that I think about it, I got a PlayStation 3 on launch day because I worked at ArenaNet on Guild Wars 2, and they bought them for us on launch day. They gave them all to us because it was like a Christmas present. So they brought us downstairs, and nobody could get them, right? PS3 launched. It was just like the PS4 or PS5 launch is going right now. Like nobody had it. Oh, maybe it was PS4 actually, I guess, now that I think about it. That wouldn't make sense. PS3 would have happened while I was still living in Texas, I think. I guess it was the PS4 launch because it would have been around 2015-ish, right? 2014-ish. So I guess it would be the PS4 that was out. But I had a PS4 for a day because I got it. They gave us one. They gave everybody in the company one, and I went straight to eBay with that shit and sold it. I was like, I don't care. They gave it to me for a present. Dude, I got like $1,200 for that thing. I was like, don't give a shit about a console. So I sold that thing, and then later on was like, I should have kept that. That actually, people who had it, like they still kept theirs and were playing it, and I was like, oh man, that looks like it was a lot of fun. I should have kept that thing. So eventually, I think 2 Christmases ago, I finally invested in one for me and the boy to play, because he wanted to play Fortnite, and so I tried playing it. I remember the first day I logged into it, was like, all right, cool, here we go. It's a shooter. You know, I played Left 4 Dead.
It's
I'm
not
good.
difficult.
I got this.
You got a gun.
This shit ain't hard. And I got in there, and I literally landed because I thought, it jumped, and I land, and as soon as I land, some guy walks over with a pickaxe and beats me to death, and my game was over. And I was like, wait a minute, like what is this? Like how is this fun? So I think I threw the controller down, turned it off, walked away, and then my son mastered it, and then was like, I'm watching him playing, like, okay, well maybe it isn't that hard. But it really is. It's just you're playing a bunch of 12-year-olds who can build faster than you can shoot, which is that's just the I am an old man, and so I just sound like an old man being like, these kids don't remember what it's like to be just a tiny square on a screen running around. But we've all got they got their skills, I've got mine.
So take me through how you found your way to ExEME. So
yeah,
you're at NCSoft. What hats?
Yeah.
What positions? What got you to ExEME?
So to start off, I was at Toys R Us working while I was in the band. I was working at Toys R Us, so that's how I was kind of staying abreast of what was kind of going on in games and things like that. And we had a computer game section, and so I would often was working inside there back when they used to have the little ticket things to go buy games.
Yeah.
You remember that, right?
Yeah.
You take the ticket off the wall, go to the booth, give the guy in the booth the thing. I used to be in the booth sometimes. I had the keys for the booth. And so, but I decided I was going to stop touring, and when I did that, I immediately went to my friend. I was friends with this guy who's known as Binky, and he at the time was working at Origin in Austin, Texas, which is where I was living at the time. And Origin was the company of Richard Garriott, the company that did UO, and Binky was like a big guy in like marketing and community and stuff like that there. And so he had said, hey, if you ever, he knew we were always talked about games and D&D and all this other stuff, nerdy stuff that we were into. And he said, hey, if you ever, whenever you stop touring, I'll get you a job. And I was like, man, I'll hold you to it. And so like the day I stopped touring, I like called him, was like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready for a job, man. And my wife at the time started working at Origin, but then Origin got bought by EA and everybody got laid off. Well, they moved a bunch of people out they moved a few people out to San Francisco and then just laid the rest of the place off, as EA is wont to do. And I can only say that because I have fallen victim to EA since then. But he got me a job, or she got laid off. So he didn't get a chance to get me a job there because it all was happening. All that happened as I was leaving, quitting the touring and everything, and they were shutting down that studio. And so my now ex-wife, but at the time she was working, I said she was working there. She went to NCSoft because NCSoft was the company that Richard Garriott, after he had sold Origin to EA, a year later, they started the Western offices of this Korean-based developer as a publishing company in the U.S. to do Lineage 2, and then to sign on and develop, very similar to En Masse, sign on and develop new IP based out of the Western market as well. And so because I knew Binky and I knew enough names that were from Origin that had people there that really liked those folks, when I was able to get an interview at NCSoft based purely off the fact that I knew Binky. And in the interview, I dropped his name like 10 times. And they hired me like on the spot because they were like, well, Binky likes you, we like you. And I was like, all right, man, that's how, and that's really how the game industry works. There is very few jobs I've ever gotten that were just based off purely like, well, I went in and I really worked hard and did the interview. And it was a lot of times it was like, yeah, I worked hard and stuff, but I also needed to know somebody or you're not going to get in there. Like,
SRAM in chat is Cochise. He got me into En Masse.
SRAM, there he is.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, in fact, so I'm working in NCSoft in Austin, and where I worked with SRAM as well. And so I got the job working originally on City of Heroes as a GM, doing in-game chat support, which is the only game I've ever worked on that ever did that. And man, was that a shit show to be involved in. Half the time I spent having to read through horrifying like sexual cyber chat logs and things like that, and I was just horrible. I got deposed during the course of the trial when Marvel sued NCSoft for City of Heroes. It was just a crazy, incredible job. Such a incredible family feel. It's like 300 strong in Austin at the time. It was like one full building, 3 stories, and then the building next door I think had 1 or 2 floors that were just NCSoft people, and it was working on Guild Wars, Auto Assault, Tabula Rasa, X-Steel, Dungeon Runners, Ion, like this huge catalog of games. Unfortunately, a lot of them lasted like maybe 5 to 6 months and then would just shut down. So that's where I went through many rounds of layoffs at NCSoft. They had a lot of ups and downs. Big staff up, launch a game, game's a failure, big layoff. Big staff up, launch a game, game's a failure, big layoff. And so it happened a few times. In the course of that, I realized I didn't want to be a customer support person forever. And I had been around folks that were doing a lot of project management, working in localization at the time. And I don't speak other languages fluently. I know enough of some of them to get myself in trouble, and that's about it. But I became acutely aware that working in localization at the time didn't mean you needed to speak Korean. You weren't being hired as a translator. You're being hired to say, okay, I have this batch of 8,000 files that have English text in them, and I need that same batch of 8,000 files with no format change to be in French, German, and Spanish. And by the way, that English was actually translated originally from Korean. It's a Korean game that we translated into English, and then we're going to translate that into 3 or 4 more languages. And so it just became organization. Where I had gained any skills to do that was from working as kind of the road manager for the band and being the all-encompassing DIY punk rock band that's putting out records and touring all that time. You learn how to just adapt to be whatever you need to be the day you need to be it. Like today I need to be the hard ass that goes in and shakes this guy down for money because he owes us money for playing. And that's what I am today. And tomorrow I'm the guy who has to navigate us from Minneapolis to Salt Lake City with a road atlas, because again, this is all pre cell phones and all that. MapQuest wasn't even really a thing yet at first. We were literally buying a new Rand McNally atlas every tour and drawing out the tour and following the road signs. And so I just learned how to adapt. And so this job came up and I just started offering to help. The job didn't come up. I just started putting myself out there. I started following them around. My friend Joey MacArthur was the localization manager, and Hope Anthony was the localization project manager. And it turned out that he was going to leave to go to, I think, like Lucas Arts or something. And then she was going to be promoted. Hope was going to be promoted. And then they were looking for someone to take over this localization project manager job. So I took that. I was able to volunteer constantly to help build demos, to help handle file structures, to start learning how HTML files work in a game, all this kind of stuff. I just started like volunteering after hours to just help all the time. So I would work my 5 p.m. till 2 a.m. shift doing customer support, and then I would stick around for 2 or 3 more hours and work till 5 or 6 in the morning, making file builds and stuff to help out, or running macros in these huge Excel docs to do translations and just all kinds of crazy stuff. So when the job came along, I still jumped through all the hoops of the interviewing and stuff, but at that point in time, I had kind of earned this odd intern experience doing it. So I took the job, and I was the localization project manager. And then there was a massive upheaval at NCSoft in 2008, end of 2008. And they were basically taking all of the production positions and moving them to Seattle from Austin and opening a headquarters here in Seattle. And the people who came up here ended up becoming a lot of the cadre that started en masse. So Noxer, SRAM, oh my God, who else? Chager, I'm not sure what his name was when he was at en masse. I think he was at en masse for a while too, right? And we all came up. I was a localization project manager. All these other guys were producers working on, mainly Ion was our big thing we were pushing out at that time. And so I really cut my teeth on Ion. That was the craziest, biggest game I ever worked on. It was like 3 million words, literally 3 million words of text. We had about 7 months to translate that from Korean to English, and then from English into French. Well, we didn't do Italian, so French, German, Spanish. And that's where I met Scott James Magner. We hired him on as a writer. We had a staff of like 15 writers, I think, that we hired. Along with Marty, and I think Marty used to work at en masse at some point, right? So we hired Marty to manage that whole team of that maniacal large team. I mean, we had such a huge team of writers working on that game that when everybody plugged their computers in, it overloaded the power circuits on the rows and blew the power in the building when we were trying to ship the game. Like literally the days of going to Gold Master, I had to hop on a bus and come home and remote into a machine someplace else because we had no power for like 7 hours at the office. It's like the day before we were shipping the Gold Master. It was just shit like that. Just crazy stuff like that. But so I was there. I eventually became a producer because Noxer, I think SRAM also came at the same time, right? At the beginning, maybe? I can't remember if he came later, but I know Noxer and a few other folks left to start en masse. So they had been up in Seattle for only about 8 or 9 months and had moved over to start en masse entertainment. And I stayed at NCSoft at the time, and when a lot of these folks left, all these positions opened up, and there was this like this kind of like stair step. These like, you know, someone opened the door and like there were 3 steps at the top, and everybody like ran up the steps to get the next 3 steps higher. So I ended up becoming an associate producer on Ion, and then eventually the producer on Ion. So I did that for a while, and then it just kind of ran its course. At that point in time, I had been at en masse since 2004.
NCSoft.
This was at NCSoft since 2004. So I was there from 2004 to 2011. And in the beginning of 2011, I reached out to some folks at en masse and said, hey, I'm looking for a change up, and I'm looking for to be involved in something from the beginning. I really everything I'd worked on, I kind of was working on, except for Ion. I came in before it launched and it helped with the big push, but still, like, the game had been around. There was a lot of stuff happening. I kept thinking, well, maybe if I insert myself earlier into the development of these things, I can be more involved in the development, the creative side of it. But I think it was just a hard lesson learned that I was working in publishing, and that's not really a thing that exists at publishing. I mean, you have some level of creativity you can get out, but for the most part, your job really is to shepherd and be a fireman and do whatever people need you to do to make sure that this thing is up and running when it needs to be, and make sure you're hitting your dates and make sure you're hitting your milestones and those kind of things, and less about any kind of like deep creative stuff. At least that's what it was at the time for me at like NCSoft. So I reached out to look for a localization position at en masse, and turned out that they interviewed me. I got to play a very early version of the game, so this would have been in January of 2011. Got to play like an early version of the game and stuff, and there was, it was very different from anything I'd ever played before, with all the no lock aim, which was very difficult for me because at the time I wasn't used to playing like any kind of like shooters or anything. I was like, why isn't this thing just locking on? I just want to hit. I don't want to have to aim at it. And it's like, that's not how this game works. So, and then so I interview went great. Everything went great. And then they decided they just weren't going to hire on a big localization effort yet. So I stayed at NCSoft, and then a few months later, ended up applying for a job at PopCap Games, working in mobile, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Smaller games, not big, massive multiplayer games. Working on things like, at the time I was hired on, I was working on like Bejeweled, Zuma, things like that. But it was a development studio, and so now it was all creative, right? It was just this, like, I could literally go into work and be like, hey, I think we should have a box in that corner. And be like, yeah, that sounds cool. Let's put a box in that corner. And then they put a box there. And I'm like, holy shit, that box was my idea. So it was very different. It was a very different kind of production. It was production, but it was production where at a level that you think of like in a TV, when you think of like a producer on TV, their job is to make sure that everybody is where they need to be, when they need to be there, basically making it so that the really talented coders and designers and developers really had an opportunity to flourish, that they didn't need to worry about whether or not the presentation was going to be prepared for the executives on this day or whatever, right? That's what the producer was going to do. They're just going to code. They're hitting milestones. They're trying to hit deliverables on certain dates, And I loved that. And then EA bought the company, and I got laid off as part of that. So that was my big gamer cred. You talk about gamer cred. Getting laid off by EA, it's hard to beat that kind of gamer cred.
That's when you've made it. Yeah.
That's, you've made it when you are so essential that EA lays you off.
That's right.
The day that we got bought out, I literally got like 6 text messages from friends of mine who had worked at Origin back at NCSoft, who had written me, and they were like, hey man, just saw the news, watch yourself. And I was like, no, I just watched John Riccatello stand on this stage in front of the entire company and say, we aren't changing anything about PopCap. You guys have got a formula here. You know what you're doing. You guys have got it. And then 1 year later to the day when the deal was finally finalized and everything was done and everything had rolled over, laid off a third of the company. So they were right. I should have paid attention.
So what was that interview like at MAS? I don't know what it was early in the time.
Yeah.
We used to do like 10-hour days for interviewees. Like,
this was like a 3-hour-ish, probably. It was at the one that was over. It was at the old office, the original office, I guess, the one that's over on Dexter, I think, right?
You interviewed way over at Dexter?
Yeah, I interviewed at Dexter.
Holy crap!
So there was like maybe like 20 people working there, maybe at the time, maybe if that, maybe 15. I interviewed with Noxer, which was weird because we were already friends who had moved to Seattle together and had hung out outside of. It was But it was still an interview. For that, it was more of it. Honestly, to be completely fair, everybody I interviewed with that day, it really was more of just a conversation, kind of like this, to be honest. It was just very conversational. They already knew me. They knew what I could do. They knew that if they needed someone to figure out how to handle a crazy versioning system, Perforce or whatever it was we were using, like that I had no problem pulling off those things. I'd done it for Ion. I could do it for this game too. But it was kind of weird because I was interviewing with friends, and so that's always kind of strange. And I've been on the other side now where I've interviewed friends for jobs. I interviewed you for the associate product manager position. We were friends at that point. You've been working with me as a QA person for, at that point, I think it was like 8 months or so, if I remember correctly, something like that. So that was a little strange, but I'm trying to remember who all the people that were there in that first iteration of it. It was Chris Lee, right? I think he was the CEO at the time, and Knox, and I think Chager was there, maybe. No. Oh yeah, it was, because this was around the time that Chager had left there. left NCSoft and I had gotten the producer position that he had, because I was his associate producer. So, but the job wasn't for a production position. It was for another localization. So it was kind of rolling back to what I had first moved to Seattle doing a couple years earlier. But I just figured I just wanted to find an in. That's the one thing about the game industry that people don't realize. Like, it's not really, you don't always necessarily, I mean, you should try to go for the job you want. You should always have that goal in mind, but sometimes just getting your foot in the door and making yourself available for these other things is how you get the job that you want, right? Like, it'd be really easy to say, like, laser focused, I always wanted to be a producer. That is absolutely not the case. I never knew what I was going to be. I knew I wanted to work in games. If they had hired me to sweep the floors at NCSoft back in 2004, I probably would have taken it, because it would have gotten me in the building so that I could hover around and learn, hey, what are those guys doing? What does that guy do? What does he do? I like what he does. I've seen the stuff he does. I want to do that. And then just make myself available like I did to get that localization position. So I think it's not only is it like who you know sometimes to get you the job, but also just getting your foot in the door, just getting in there and doing it, because you'll be exposed to everything and not locking yourself down. I have a lot of people who I worked with, and this is just not my personality to just sit still and be okay with being a worker bee and just humming along. It's just never really been in my wheelhouse to be like that. So I wasn't okay with just being a G, and I hate saying just, because it's not an easy job and it's a very difficult job and very necessary job. But I wasn't okay with just being a GM, like just being a customer support rep. For some people, that's fine for them, because that meets all of their needs that they want. They want the freedom at that point. I still wanted more responsibility. I still wanted people to have to come to me and be like, Sean, I don't know what we're going to do. This thing's going wrong. What are we going to do? And I'd be like, I'll be the superhero. And then I come in with my brilliant idea and I solve it for them. Or I fuck it up beyond recognition and then try to explain my way out of it, which is probably more often than not. But,
so if you interviewed at Dexter, then that was like the early days of NMAS, but that's not when you got hired at NMAS.
No. So I ended up going through a couple more positions. So the other jobs that I had, to shorten this down a little bit, I guess we're taking quite a long time here. But so after I got laid off by PopCap, I ended up at, interestingly, another NCSoft offshoot. I ended up at ArenaNet working on Guild Wars 2. And I ended up with that job the same way. A lot of people who I knew that I had worked with as colleagues and peers when I was working at NCSoft and localization were people that I knew there at ArenaNet. And ArenaNet at the time was kind of like the cool kids at NCSoft. They kind of did their own thing. They were off in a corner in their own studio. NCSoft never had their hands inside there telling them what to do. They were kind of always bucking the system. If NCSoft said, we think you should do it this way, they would almost purposely do it the opposite way just to show them that they could do it their own way. I felt like just was like the cool, I just wanted to be part of the cool kids. Never was in my entire life. And somehow that was, to me, was where all the cool kids were working. And so I went there. Also, remember, I was unemployed. So then they wanted to hire me. So that was also a real big thing to make me go, yeah, they're a great company. They want me to work there. That's good enough for me. Could have been Kmart and I probably would have been stoked. But so I was at ArenaNet. And then I left ArenaNet to go to geocaching. So I got out of video games. I had a crisis of conscience, to be honest. So as you've mentioned, I have a son. He's 13 now. But at this point in time, when I was working at ArenaNet, I guess this would have been in 2014, right? So my son would have probably been about 5, 6, 7 years old at that time. And I was working on these games, and I was like, he would want to watch me play, and I'd just be like, man, there's a lot of slashing and blood, and I don't know if that's appropriate for you right now. And that just kind of dawned on me, wait a minute, if I don't think this is appropriate for my own kids to play, but I'm trying to do things to get other people's kids to play this game, that felt a little weird to me. No judgment on anybody else who does that kind of thing or works those. This was just totally a personal crisis of conscience, morality issue that I was kind of like, I think I want to get out of video games. I don't really feel like I didn't mind working at PopCap because it was all cutesy and was popping gems and shooting little marbles out of a frog's mouth. Like that's okay. But when you've got a skeleton running around slicing people in half, I was like, okay, this isn't really appropriate for my 6 or 7-year-old. I don't think so. I went to a company called Geocaching, which is not a video game company. It's actually a kind of a real world game. If people have ever heard of or done geocaching before, it's basically like a live real world treasure hunt where you use an app on your phone or a GPS if you're hardcore old school, and you go navigate to what amounts to a piece of Tupperware out in the woods hidden somewhere, and you open it up and there's a little log book and you can sign it, and then you get to log that you found that book and all these things. And so I became an engagement manager working on that for the website. Very family friendly. It's a big family activity. So that was really kind of that was one of the big reasons why I left ArenaNet, was I just needed to get somewhere and kind of clean my palate. And then I got let go from there, and it was like, it was a big whammy of a time for me, actually, to be honest. That happened. My mother passed away like a month after that, I think. I was unemployed. I couldn't get a job. Nobody was hiring. Also, when I moved to geocaching, I had become a product manager. So there's lots of names for what we do, right? Producers, product managers, brand managers, production assistants. It's all a jack of all trades. It's all the same shit. Product manager, I would say the only additional thing there is that you really do stand at the crossroads of marketing, customer service, and the product. You're really supposed to be owning the product itself, right? This is not just I'm making sure the dates are good and this thing goes out on time. This is I am making sure that my game is represented in the world. I'm making sure that I am fully aware of how money is being spent. I'm fully aware of the health and state of the game. I'm fully aware of what the developers are supposed to be doing. That's really what a product manager's difference is. Whereas a producer is doing a lot of that, is also managing probably budgets, is probably managing a milestone schedule, probably managing release dates, tracking everything in huge Gantt charts, lots of spreadsheets, and those kind of things. So anyway, so I was looking for product manager jobs, and couldn't find anything anywhere. It was just a bad time. And literally weeks before I was going to get probably evicted, because I had no idea where rent was coming from at that point, I saw that Halrath, I think is right. Is that Robin's name? Mm-hmm. Halrath. Okay, so Halrath had posted that he had just been promoted to an associate product manager position shortly before this, a few months while I was laid off. And so I reached out to Noxer, who I saw had just returned to En Masse after he had left and come back, right? So I reached out to him and said, hey, saw that you guys just posted a product manager position for TERA, and so this was in 2017, right? This is the spring of 2017. And it was May, actually, because I got hired in May. So it would have been like April, May. He said, yeah. He's like, I'd love to talk to you about it. I think it's going to be awesome. I think you'd be great at it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I did a phone interview with Denominator. He was very intimidating on the phone, by the way.
Really?
He really was. He was being friendly, as he is. He's being very Canadian. But
I think at that time he was already aware that you were a punk rock musician, and he already idolized you a little bit. So maybe he was trying to cover for that. He was a little nervous.
In hindsight, yes. He had said that in the past because he had heard of my band and things like that. But I was just the way that he spelled the job out to me, it sounded like a marketing job. He was like, we need someone to really run with these marketing campaigns. And I was kind of like, hey, I just want you to know I've worked as a producer for marketing teams when I was at ArenaNet, but I am not a marketing guy. And I'm not looking to become a marketing guy. Like, I don't want to like I would love to be involved in the marketing of my game, but like I can't create like a marketing plan for you. I don't know all of the psychology that goes behind all of that stuff. I had learned at geocaching all the things that I did not know. Like it was exposed to me like, hey, like leave this shit to the experts. Don't try to meddle in what they're doing because they know what they're doing and you don't. So I became very aware, and I think that was probably where I learned to always know, like surround yourself with the people who know the answers or who can get the answers and who are better at those things than you are. Like if you can't do something, then you find somebody who is, pardon my French, fucking amazing at doing that thing. And you get them to follow you around and you get to work with those people. That to me was a big thing I learned there. So I went in for my interview at NMass at this was the final office. You guys had moved offices a few times. I never got to see any of the in-between offices. So I got to see the first and I got to see the last. I went in for the interview. They called me up after my phone interview had gone well. And I remember doing it on my back porch. I literally remember the day of doing the interview on the back. I remember fiddling with spider webs that were hanging from the back of the porch and crap while I was talking to Denome. It was just like, I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember it because I got called back like the next day. I got invited to come downtown. Now, mind you, this was like a 6-month unemployment stint where I had been interviewing. Like I had interviewed like 4 times at Amazon, and which thank God I never got a job there. But like 4 times I interviewed there, and those are like 8-hour interviews. And it's like speed dating. It's an 8-hour interview, but it's 16 separate interviews. You're only doing 30 minutes with each group. And what I found out, since I have friends that work there that I know, that's not like you're going in and you're sitting down with a bunch of people who work in the games team or people who work in whatever team. You're interviewing people who have absolutely nothing. It'd be like Keaton. It'd be like me saying, I'm gonna have you. I want you to come work at Funko, so I'm gonna have you interview with the janitor, and I want you to explain to the janitor for the first 27 minutes of your interview what a product manager does, and then you got to wow them in those last 3 minutes to make them want to hire you. And that's basically what those were. So when I came in for the interview there, I was well rehearsed when it came to that shit. But what I also had learned was during the course of all those horrible interviews was just to like not bullshit these people when I came in there. Just like walk in and be like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Or yeah, I know like I don't want to do marketing. So if you're looking for a marketing guy, I am not your guy. As bad as I need a job, like I'm not going to lock myself into something I can't do. And so I did 3 interviews. Were you in one of my interviews?
Nope. I don't think
no,
so.
You weren't? Okay. So I interviewed with Matt Denome and then there was a marketing guy named Matt something that was there at the time. I interviewed with those 2. And then I interviewed with Space Cats as my community because it was like they I loved the way they unmasked it because they had like disciplines interviewing me. I had a creative group that had, I believe, Curtis and them might have been in my interview, if I remember correctly. There was like a creative one. There was the community one, community and customer service. And then there was like a marketing and production one. And so it was 3 interviews. They were about an hour with each person. And I had also learned, being unemployed for that long, that every time I thought I nailed an interview, I usually meant I bombed it. And usually when I thought I bombed it was when people would be like, "You went really, really well." And I'd be like, "What are you talking about, man? I sound like a babbling idiot most of the time." But on my drive home, and I'm literally, I'm not shitting you. I'm literally, this is like March 14th or something, or I'm sorry, May 14th or something. And like, I don't know where rent is coming from on June 1. My bank account is depleted. When my mom passed, like I spent all my money, all my savings between unemployment running out and having rent and car payments and all the other things going on. Like I was out of money. I had nothing. I was like, I don't know. There is no unemployment. There's no money coming in. And so on the drive home, I remember I got the call from Ginny and said, "Hey, we want to offer you the job." And I was like, "Can I start Monday?" They were like, "Yeah, you can." I was like, "What do I get paid?" I called my landlord, like on the way home, called my landlord. "I just got a job. Rent will be there." He was like, "Okay, I didn't know rent was ever a thing that maybe wasn't going to happen." And so I was like, "It's all good. We're all good, man. Don't worry." And so I got it all taken care of. So yeah, that's how I ended up at Mass. And then oddly enough, it turns out that the person who I was replacing at the time was somebody who I had worked with at PopCap. And I don't know if he had gotten laid off at the same time as me a couple years earlier when all that had happened, but I remember we had been colleagues. We'd never worked together per se, like on a game, but he was just another producer that was there at the time. Yeah, and so it was a crazy ride getting there, because I felt like when I walked in on day one, I was like walking in, I was like literally half the building. I was like, "Hey, what's going on? Hey, it's good to see you." You know? And then and then when Jen came on, I was like, "Okay, like we're putting the band back together here, man. I feel like it's like NCSoft Redux. Like we get to do our like second go at it again." And it was just and then when SRAM came, it kept sealing the deal every time. More people were coming in that I already knew. So it kind of felt like home from right off the bat. And then the fact that the team I was on was you, Halrath, Denominator, like very. It's weird because I wouldn't say you guys are an easy group of people to work with. You're three very different personalities, but I just kind of felt like I fit right in. Whatever the fourth peg hole that was sitting there empty, I felt like it just locked right in, and it wasn't a problem. Like day 3, I'm already having conversations with you. You're saying like, "Look, man, I sometimes I don't sugarcoat things. Sometimes I might think I don't take things personally. So if you need to tell me I'm a fucking moron, tell me I'm a fucking moron." And I was like, "Okay, man. Like I don't think I'm going to do that, but thanks for the offer. I appreciate it. I don't think I need to do that, but." And then me and Denome had lots in common and had a great time talking about stuff all the time. And yeah, and Robin, I had worked with Halrath at NCSoft as well. He was a writer at NCSoft as well. So I just had like these personalities, and I think almost all 2/3 of the writing team I had worked with before. So yeah, it just it felt like I landed where I was supposed to be at the time.
So at that point, Denominator was spinning up TERA console. NAU was a thing. He was working on JP. We had divided the product. So we had the console product and we had the PC product. So you came in and you were working exclusively on the PC product. Paint me a picture of what that early team was.
Yeah. So I was still trying to figure out. There was a little bit of hangover from my predecessor who had just left on like how he had handled things, and it seemed to me like there was a gap there where there definitely needed to be some processes put in place to help things move along, but that it felt like everybody had been burned by the last person who came along, because they just kind of took everything in themselves and just released it and didn't really like share how it was being done or what. But I've always like I am not I don't find information to be precious. Like it doesn't. If I know something, I'm totally cool if you know it too. I don't feel like I'm gonna get. I don't think that's the thing that keeps me from getting let go from my job, is because I know a piece of information. If that's all it's taking, then I suck at what I'm doing. Like I'm like, that's not. I don't want to hold that over people's heads. So when I came in at first, I just was like, man, there was definitely a lot of contention when I would get on the calls. I think that was my first impression. We would get on the calls with our contacts on the business team, and I could see very different. Like it was like two different eye lines. Like you're looking straight at their chin talking, and they're looking right at your forehead, and neither person was really like grokking what the other one was saying. So I remember the first few things. I remember coming out of the first few phone calls and just kind of like being quiet, absorbing things, trying to think of where I could maybe only jumping in when I felt like I really had something to put in on the conversation, but kind of just sitting in the background and watching what was going on. And I was like, man, like there was definitely certain people in the room who felt like they were in both of the rooms, who felt like they were just waiting for their chance to talk. They did not give a shit what the other side had to say. It was like, we need this, this, and this. This is what works. And I had always been of the opinion that, like, I never think I'm the guy in the room with the best idea. There's probably, odds are good, there's someone in here a lot smarter than me or just a lot better idea than me. And so I don't try to poo-poo those ideas right out of the gate. I would rather hear what everybody has to say, because maybe it isn't the right answer, but maybe it's the answer that spurs on the right answer from somebody in the room. But I remember hearing some stuff in there where it was just like, yeah, well, we just do this because this is the way it's done. And I was like, okay, well, I like the last couple of jobs I worked at, like, you never uttered that phrase. If you couldn't give a good reason why you do something, then you quit doing it and see what the effect is. If the effect is negative, then go back to doing it. You know now what it does, right? Like, but to say like, well, we don't direct sell items. Loot boxes are the way to go. Why? Well, because, you know, when we tried doing that before, it just didn't work. Well, what happened? It just didn't work. It didn't make as much money. Well, how did you promote it? What did you do? How did you go about it? What was the process? And they're just like, it just doesn't work. They just keep putting stuff in loot boxes and keep doing this way. And you're kind of like, is that really the answer? Is just because you've never done it another way? That's the way you're going to keep doing things? That just, and I get that there's years. Now, this is like working on TERA at that point in time. How long is TERA live at that point? What you guys launched in 2011, right? Was it late 2011?
Came on probably 6 years.
Oh, it was 6 years, because we were about to do the 6-year anniversary the following. You guys had just done the 5th-year anniversary before I got there. So we were planning the first one I did was the 6th-year anniversary. That's right. So the game had been live for long enough to where it had gone past the point of, oh, this shit's going to crash and burn and die in 6 months, right? It survived those hurdles. And so I understood that there was history to be learned from. But there's also a reason, you know, sometimes why you want to inject some of those new ideas in. And I had just come, like I said, I just come off. Now I had come back into games, and now I'm back into, this is, by the way, that point when I was kind of like, this morally ambiguous area was being created again, because I had just left that job at on Guild Wars when I left to go to geocaching, and I was kind of back in the same realm again, where I'm like, okay, I don't know if this is 100% appropriate for my kid, but all right.
You came to a company where you're piling on a couple more.
Yeah.
Issues. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, but I've got to have a job, right? I've never been able to approach it like you said. I've never been able to approach it like it's just a job. Like, I'm not a product manager or a producer or any of those things that just walks in and is just like, clock in at 9, clock out at 5, don't give a shit what happens on the other 16 hours or whatever. So it was very, I just take shit personally. I take pride in my job. It hurts my feelings when I feel like I've let somebody down, whether it be the people playing. I've played enough games. I don't want to be let down, right? I've played all these games. I know what it feels like to get let down by a game. Yeah. So I know what it feels like. So
it seems like you came in and immediately noticed that maybe our goals were a little different, or maybe there was some cultural differences. So was that was that your first thing that you had to improve?
That was the first thing I wanted to improve. That, and I also wanted to get Matt onto console. I realized from a company perspective, I think that was another thing that I was blessed with working at geocaching, was I got a bigger perspective of like a company and a portfolio as a whole. Like, I didn't want it to be all about my game only, which at NMAS is very difficult because intrinsically TERA is in the DNA of NMAS, right? NMAS launched as a way to get TERA out, and then NMAS grew beyond TERA. It was trying to grow beyond TERA, but at its root, it's still owned. At that point in time, it was prior to the Craft On Union and all, you know, the kind of rebranding of how things, the restructuring of how things were working. At that time, it was still like, it's literally our publishing company is talking to the developer of this game, but there's a bigger group of other games and other things happening that we don't talk to, but we're all part of this thing. There's this very bizarre relationship that I wasn't used to. The NCSoft relationship was very much a straight publisher. Here's a publisher. Here are all of our titles. Here are the contacts for those titles. The producers of those titles are the ones who talk to each of those development teams. But we are kind of analogous of any of those games. Like, as a business case, if we want to shut down Lineage 2, we're shutting down Lineage 2. Like, we don't have to keep Lineage 2 running. Like, I don't think there is an option at any point in time was it probably offered up as an option to say, en masse, to say, like, look, we're just done with TERA, we're shutting it down. Like if he came to it, that was a much bigger conversation. They had to have a lot more people involved from other outside teams. So that was a little weird for me to get used to, was the idea that like this game is like part of the DNA of this company. But I do know there's a lot of bigger plans for what this company wants to be and what it needs to be. And you know, Commander, I mean, I have no amount of there's no limit to the good things I could say about some of the visionary ideas and discussions that I would have. I miss sitting in Sam's office and just bullshitting with him about an idea and getting excited, or talking about, oh shit, this latest Gundam mobile game came out. If you played it, oh my god, let's sit down, let's talk about this latest Gundam mobile game and all the shit they're doing right and all the shit that we think they're doing wrong, and just talking about the conceptual ideas behind some of the design ideas and things like that, and making it so that you can have those broad conversations that aren't siloed to say like, well, I'm only going to talk to you about production processes, I don't want to talk about monetization, right? Or like I could talk about anything I wanted to talk about and I was being heard, which is you know, you don't get that at all. I can tell you, after how many years now? 16? No. 2004? Is that 16 years? Oh my God. After 16 years, I can tell you that is a pretty unique position to be in, to be able to walk into your CEO's office and sit down and just bullshit with him about games. Because he's a gamer. You know, I worked with a lot of CEOs at game companies who haven't played a game, and if they have ever played a game or were ever addicted to playing a game, it was, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago that they played games. So my initial impression was this is a different type of company. I came into it with one expectation of this is going to be like NCSoft. It's very much not like NCSoft. But there's a lot of places here where I want to free up Matt. I want Matt to work on console. I want him to get out of PC and give me PC. And it wasn't because I thought Matt was doing a bad job, or I'm like, hell, I was leaning on Matt more often than Matt and you more than anything else. But I wanted him to get console out. I thought it was important for PC to have a console counterpart, because it was only going to do great things. It was going to spread awareness about our game. Even if you don't give a shit about the console version of TERA, when you were in April of 2018, right? That was 2018 when we launched it. If you were on or around a PlayStation 4 console or an Xbox console, you were just inundated constantly with pictures of TERA. And if you didn't care about it, at least it made you go like, what is this game? Oh, they have a PC version. Oh, I play PC games. So I was like, there's no downside to us. We aren't going to lose a bunch of players because of this. I felt deeply that we wouldn't, that it was just diversification. It was just giving more people more opportunities to play your game. Like, why wouldn't you do that? So my first thing was I wanted to get him freed up, but I knew that I didn't know enough about the game. And once I saw what we had to go through to get a build out, it wasn't just like, all right, the package got delivered, QA, test it, make sure that it looks all right. All right, get it in the patcher. Let's patch that shit out. All right, game's out, good to go. I was like, no. Instead, we're going to be digging around in XML data sheets for days, trying to merge in, 6 years of changes that we've tuned up for our territory that's specific, that the developer will not maintain any kind of version control over. Now we have to do that. Once I saw all of the minutia of how to get just a build out, that was when my eyes really got open to like, okay, this job is going to be complex. And it was a very complicated job. It engulfed my life constantly. I mean, I cannot tell you how many nights. I mean, I would say in that first year, a typical week working on TERA was like probably 60, 65 hours a week. Easy, 70 hours a week maybe. We were staying late most nights. Come home, watch TV, just grab my computer and just log back on.
Yeah, 10, 12-hour days where that was just your thing.
Merging data sheets, start. And then at the same time, hey, I got this brilliant idea. I want to do this large-scale event using a minimal amount of tools that we have to make this game work. let's do Argon Assault over a month of this thing, and then not even
What a
having
great
any
idea that
clue.
was.
Oh my God, it ate my life up so much and it had a good return for the first few days, and then it just faded off because it became like everything else. You can't do things for more than a couple days before people just go, all right, now what? We did this for 4 days. Okay, now what? And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, so it just became all encompassing for a long time, and it really started, it's like doing a tour of duty, man. Like it's having been in the military, I can say it's very similar to doing a tour of duty. I did a tour in the Middle East.
Yeah.
It's very similar.
Well, if you will, let's go through the little pieces. Because right now I've had Denominator on, but he was in console. He wasn't on PC for most of my time there, so I didn't have much there. I've had Commander on, but he was high up. So you're the direct TERA PM that we have to talk to. You're the first TERA PM we're talking to. So I'd like to go through all those little things that you were talking about: monetization strategy, marketing, operations, player sentiment, dev relationships, the things that we worked on: murder mystery, Argon Assault. If you don't mind, now we could talk about them specifically. I don't want to get into any trouble. No NDA kind of. Let's go to.
No.
But
luckily, my memory is so bad. I probably could only I will only know it at a top level anyway. At this point, I'll remember some of the details, but I could never give you. I can't remember how to merge a data sheet, man.
But I'd also love to hear. I'm never going to forget how to merge data sheets. I'll let you. I did that for so long. I have dreams of I'm doing it. But also throw in, you've worked at so many other places and so many different industries. So I'd love to get, the TERA specific point of view, but also the larger point of view. And one of the things I really want to talk about, the other goal of all this, not just me dealing with my own personal, emotional moving from EME transition period.
Closure. Yeah.
But also I worked with you for a long time, and as I said at the beginning, I have a ginormous amount of respect for you. But transitioning from QA into product management, going into TERA, you and I split things. I was doing live operations events, and you were doing product manager, dev relationship, monetization stuff. So we talked all the time. We went to lunch all the time. You and I built a great relationship. But when it came to roles and responsibilities, it's now looking back, it seems like we were so separate, and I missed so many opportunities. Yeah. So I want to dig into that. Monetization strategy. We went through a lot. There were a lot of things that have come up through Amy's time, right? There was the whole, loot boxes may get legislated out, and we're going to have to start thinking about that as a company. What do we do if we can't do loot boxes? There have been a lot of things that we've shifted through over time. You and I went through, I had this idea of, I don't like strong boxes. I have this opinion. And I remember you worked with me, and we talked to the developer. But I look back on that, I'm like, holy crap, what do I have? Can I speak as an expert? And I didn't get that. So I don't think we can do that in this conversation, but I would love to hear, if you could, if that's the approach of, hey, SeanDynamite, tell SingleBear how monetization works.
Well, no, but you know what? With the first part though, just to go back to what you said about when we first split responsibilities, I think I just determined that was really necessary because it just became very obvious that the amount of work required some focusing. And I think my plan at the time wasn't so much to silo you from me and say, okay, look, you handle all live ops, I'll handle all money stuff. I wanted there to be a little bit of cross-pollination in there, of course, but what I was hoping for both of us was that we would get to that point where if all you had to worry about. So I wanted there to be cross-pollination, but what I thought was more important was that we were both subject matter experts. And what I knew was that what I didn't know. And what I didn't know was the day-to-day operations of get something in that kind of strict producer role, which is don't worry about the brand as much. You're shepherding in a build from a foreign developer. Luckily, there's a whole localization process that we don't have to worry about that's happening on the side. Well, we have to worry about it some, but it's not as we do have people that are assigned, hopefully, to do that. But really, it was about managing, well, what is the QA process? How do we know when something is ready to go out the door? Are we officially putting our stamp that this is ready to go? Or, which you were the one who helped to identify this, there was this kind of like fever dream that everybody was in, that like QA was really like quality assuring that this was the best version of this game to go out the door. And that is not what our QA did. Our QA was specifically saying, is the North American TERA version that we have built over all these years and stuck together with tape and glue and putty, maintaining all of this tape, glue, and putty with every version that we put out, right? So there was that piece. And then there was the piece of, but our player base also has 5.5, 6 years of exhaustion on the content. And the content is coming out and is beaten in days. It's also, I think, a change in the industry, right? I don't know what's different between TERA in 2018 and World of Warcraft in 2008. But I never found a point when I remember playing World of Warcraft. A lot of people that I knew, even people who I knew that raided and were in guilds and were doing like super hardcore, at no point did they ever just be like, there's just nothing to do in the game anymore. Come up with some events. Give us some shit to do. And we're going to do it for 12 hours, and then we're going to bitch about the fact that there's nothing else to do. Right? I don't remember that.
That sounds like a very non-specific example.
Well, I'm just saying, it really is more of a general example, because it just felt like we were being expected to create content for a game without content creation tools, right? The people who develop games and designers and people who do those things and create quest lines and stories, they have tools, and we know they have tools because we had to deliver Excel sheets to them that were in specific formats so they could just feed into their tool to spit out how this event would work, right? And so we know that the tools existed. We were never given access to have tools. We figured out how to hack our way into the game files to make changes, which is because the people who, I believe, the people who helped start NMAS and TERA and working on TERA in North America were people who did that at NCSoft. Mm. They learned there that the developer from Lineage was not giving us a tool to create events in the game. They were making people do the same thing. Send us your proposals. Send us these 25 spreadsheets. Send us this. Give us all of this information. Take 4 months to explain to us this 2-week event, and then we'll give you our blessing or not. Right? That would happen at NCSoft all the time, and so what I wanted to do was, okay, there's an expectation level. There's not that no one ever came to me and said, hey, Sean, part of your job as product manager on TERA is to make sure that we're generating events and content for the players. No one ever said that to me. But the player base, I am very sensitive because I come from customer support. Right? As I said earlier, I started in the industry in customer support. I started in the industry dealing with mostly, you don't hear from the 95% of happy players. People don't write in to customer support and be like, I just love your fucking game. You guys are doing such a great job. It's either, this guy called me a N-bomb, or this guy did this, or this guy's kill stealing, or this guy, whatever. Right? It's a lot of whining. A lot of people that just kind of need to buck up, or people who are like being legitimately terrorized by people in game, or have a legitimate beef, or have legitimate bugs that are blocking their progress in the game, things like that, right? So you don't hear from, it's a lot of negativity, and so you have to have some amount of empathy for the players. To be successful in customer supported community, you have to have empathy for them. Best way to gain the empathy is to play that game and understand what they're complaining about. And I played the game And I realized that my personality fits really well in TERA because I love leveling up a character. You know this because I leveled up to max level, I think 9, 10 characters. And then I would get to the top level and I'd play for a few weeks and then go, meh, I'm gonna start over. And I go back to the beginning and I'd run the entry, the opening island, the starting area again, and I'd run through the same quest lines and I'd do all the same shit all the way. And I'd try, because over the years so much content had been created to make you skip huge parts of the game, I would try to slow myself down and go do all this side shit that was being, there's all this content there, but maybe it's the Western personality had really like choked that thing to say like, we just want to be level 60, we just want to get to the end level, we just want to get there and play these same dungeons over and over and over and over. And it was like, okay, that's totally cool if that's your personality, but you can't complain that there's no content because you literally just skipped like 80% of the content in the game. You were supposed to take months to level up. Remember when we did the level up contest thing at work? What was Scott James Magner like 17 or 15 hours or something like that? Wasn't that where he ended up? Because he just went in and did what's the what is the thing with the Halrath did the thing with the babies, the big what I can't remember what it's called now.
I would have
Kumas. He just leveled up off Kumas. He did that and like that was it.
Yeah, you just go to Kumas Royale and you grind that up.
Grind it. The grind, but it was grinding one thing, right? And so the difference was I wanted to grind the character. I wanted to progress my character, right? I wasn't trying to race to 60 because I didn't want to be 60 because I just didn't, it was that for my interest, for what I enjoy doing on my free time when I'm playing a game was not to go in and then jump into like a big guild or a big raid group and be constantly doing the same dungeons over and over and things like that. That's just not what I like to play. Doesn't mean that I think there's anything wrong with it or that I hate it or I don't want people to do it and therefore I block people from doing it. It's just not my personal favorite. So I recognize that there is a lot of content there, but the game had been designed to skip that content. We had lots of conversations with you and Scott James and a bunch of folks about that. And so I wanted you to focus on that live event portion because I felt like there was an unspoken mandate that we needed to provide something to the players to do. Something just to every other month. Because there was already these built-in like holidays, like we had there was all the built-in holidays that already exist, right? There's like, 4 of them or something throughout the year, I think. But what are you going to do for the other 8 months, right? So for 4 months out of the year, you have these holidays. But we basically need every month something new and something maybe repeatable because you're putting a lot of money in. And you got to remember, I always look at things by like the dollar amount that it would cost to do it. For example, if we're having a meeting and it's me and SRAM and Keaton and Commander and Denominator, and we're all sitting in a room for an hour to talk along with Josh Fulmore and one of the writers, and we've got all these people in this one room now, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, on average, let's say about $40 an hour, $35 an hour. We're paying everybody in this room on an average, let's say. And we've got 8 or 9 of us in here. So this meeting is costing us, $350 to have this meeting. It's costing $350. The company is paying $350 for us to sit in a room and think of ideas of shabby events that we can throw together because we have a substandard, what we feel is a substandard tool system to meet what we want to do. Not that it's substandard in general, but just to do what we want to do. I didn't think that was a good way to spend those people's time or that money. I would prefer to say, okay, we have a product manager and an associate product manager. The associate product manager needs to be aware of what the product manager is working on because they need to support it. In the end of the day, this is a free-to-play game, so this game is not going to survive if there's no money coming in. We know the percentage of people that spend money in our game. That's a thing that as a product manager I track. I keep track of very specific metrics, right? Like I want to know how much money people are spending. I want to know what percentage how much money people are spending is probably the most vanity metric of all of it. What's important is what's the percentage of the number of people who play this game? What percentage of them are paying to support? Those people are supporting everybody else. Those people are the parents, not the freeloader kids who are living until they're 18 and aren't earning a goddamn thing in the house. Those are the people that are keeping the lights on for everybody else, right? But what fun is a game to play if nobody else is playing with you in a massively multiplayer game, right? You can't run dungeons because there's not enough people playing. Why is there not enough people playing? Well, there's not enough engagement from the people who aren't paying to play the game. The people who are paying are so passionate, they're going to play as much as possible. They put money into this. They're invested in it, literally, financially invested in the game. And that is why I can segue to, I don't like pay-to-play models. I think it's horrible. I want to go back to either subscription-based services or go back to just, look, I buy the game for $60, $80, $100.
Free to play. You don't like free to play models.
Yeah. No. What did I say?
Pay to play, which would be buy the product.
Right. Yeah, free to play. Right. I don't like free to play models for that reason, because I feel like you are putting the onus of keeping the lights on the people who are financially invested, but the people who are, and I'm not going to call them freeloaders because they're not freeloaders, they're players. It's a free to play game. That's the idea. But they are the set dressing that makes the game fun for everybody else, that the people that are paying. The people that are paying are not more important, because without the people who are there to fill out those groups, the pickup groups, the people who are there to just give a population and a life to the world. When I walk into a city and it's barren and I see vendors standing around, that's sad. It's like depressing. It'd be like right now going out to Pike's Place in the middle of the pandemic and being like, this is sad. This is fucking weird. Right? So I don't think that, I think that those people are just as necessary. The problem is I can show you metrics to say, what is the average revenue per paying user? What is the, what are some of the other ones? Average revenue per paying user, average revenue per user, which is, we spread out the money that percentage of people spend over the entire game's population. We have these different things, but like I can measure that, but how do I measure the other part? Which you and I have discussed this ad nauseum.
I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it.
And I don't know if there ever will be an answer, because what I just explained is that intangible of people serving as set dressing, if you want to call it that, or people just serving as something that makes the game feel alive. Massively multiplayer games feel alive because there is an amount of chaos happening where it's random people, other live real people playing with you at the same time. If you don't see other people playing that game, it's a ghost town. There's no fun. The game was designed to have a full city. High Watch is designed to be packed with people, right? Velica is designed to be packed with people. When they're not, it looks weird and empty and ghost town, and no one wants to be a part of that. Not even the paying users. So now the paying users leave, and now your game shuts down. That's the way it works, right? So how do you measure that level of engagement? And that is an issue that I have not in 16 years found a single company that has a good answer for, but every single goddamn one of them ask it. And inevitably, the answer you usually get from community folks, things like that, is, well, our finger is on the pulse, and we'll tell you what we feel. Well, then the problem there is then now I'm seeing it through the lens of your eyes, not the reality of it. I'm seeing it, you're going to tell me based off of what you think a healthy game is supposed to look like or feel like. That's not what I'm interested in. I mean, I'm glad you have an opinion, but that's not data. And data is what, in the end of the day, data is what drives these decisions.
You don't know where they're cherry picking. You're not getting the source. You're not getting raw data. You're getting
how many times
conclusion.
Yep. And how many times did you and I think we've had a couple incidences where we saw data being put together in a format and being presented to leadership
to win an argument.
And then I went through and went, wait a minute, bing, 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 bing. And then here's a chart that shows the exact same thing. You just showed me the exact normal life cycle of this game. You didn't explain anything about why. That specifically, I think we saw that, and the most egregious use of that was when the proxy stuff happened. When we started blocking people, or when we started blocking people based on the proxy thing and the design code and proxy thing.
We're not there yet.
No.
So you and I, we've divided some responsibilities up.
Yeah.
I'm missing out on a lot of things. So give me monetization. There were a lot of rules, right? Like what went into a loot box, what went into a smart box, what items you would do, how they cycled in and out. I think, were you there when we went through the change of full store to scarcity, or was that before or after you? Yeah. Walk me through monetization for TERA.
Well, there was this idea of, it's weird because I don't want to say that it was, I think it was all based off of, like, again, historical feelings about things the way they had happened, not about historical data the way it had happened. It was more about, well, when I think the official position from our business contacts that were representing the development team, they were like, they wanted a Walmart, right? They wanted a Fred Meyer. No one's gonna go to Fred Meyer's. I'll just say Walmart. Everybody knows what a Walmart is. They want a giant store that has everything you could ever possibly want, just stocked in the shelves, all the way to the ceiling, because that is what brings people in, and they'll just buy everything they can. And then there was another train of thought that we were proposing, which was a curated storefront approach. So instead of have everything in the world available at one time, it was, well, what if we rotate through things? What if things have a life cycle that they live in the store instead? So when you drive a sense of urgency. So the difference between a Walmart and like a corner vintage store, right? If I go to a vintage store and I find a really cool Boba Fett Return of the Jedi action figure on card, and I know they got one, I don't go, well, the store is always here. It's always got stock. They'll probably always have that one. I'll just wait. I'll just wait and get it. I go, no, I better friggin' buy that today. I don't know if it's ever going to be back in. I don't know if they're ever going to get another one of those in stock. I don't know. I don't know when the next time that's going to be for sale, basically. Right? And so that's the idea, is that you drive urgency to buy your product when it's ready or when it's available. And you count on people having that FOMO, right? Which is how all pay-to-play works, or free-to-play works, is there's this fear of missing out. Look at Fortnite. Oh, my God. You talk about someone that's, well, now I think they're kind of hurting since their whole Apple spiel, and they've really backed themselves into a corner now because their store now is a hell of a lot bigger than it used to be. And I think that's because they've lost a significant portion of their revenue based on other decisions they made. But they would have like 4 things in the store, 5 things in the store for a day at a time, right? And it was like, if I don't buy, in fact, my son would go to websites and track and see when was the last time this thing was on the store, and when is it expected? Because you can kind of go, well, if that's the cycle, then if it was 8 months ago that they had this costume in the store, it might be 8 months again or more, because they're going to keep adding stuff along the way. It could be 8 more months before I ever see this thing again. And I really want it. I need to buy it now. I have 24 hours to buy this thing. I'm buying it now, right? So there's just this idea of creating scarcity, creating FOMO, making people fear that they might not get this thing. What if they put out this Halloween costume and then they retire it? What if they don't say it, but when it comes out of the store, they go, thank you, everybody, for those sales, and we're retiring that costume. It'll never be available again, right? Not that I can't think of a game where people have ever done that. But
so League of Legends used to do it.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, one of the most pivotal, or one of the most important things I remember reading, that's always stuck with me, is back in the day, like their Olympic Corki that was released. Like Stefan SRAM would always play that, and I was like, why are you always playing that? You have Black Alistar. Play Black Alistar. Nobody ever sees that. And he was like, oh, this is retired. Nobody has it. But I remember reading an article where they came out and they said this exclusivity is, limiting. There's not much. That they changed their model, but yeah, they used to archive a lot of their skins, and they'd just be gone. That'd be it. You bought it, you had it at that time, it's gone.
Yeah. So that's totally feeding into that fear. Once you've done it, can you imagine if we would have done that with one costume? Just been like, I mean, look at the amount of people that asked for the Hello Kitty stuff. Now that was contractually we couldn't bring that back,
Right?
but we pushed. I don't know if you remember that, but we went back to Sanrio, I think it was, or was it Sanrio or was it Crunchyroll? Whoever, I think it was Sanrio. We went back to Sanrio and we're like, hey, we'd like to do this again. We talked to our business contacts and said, hey, we think that we have significant interest, and we think we have, we could give you data around what players are still playing the game today that were around when you did this last time, and what percentage of players are new that are spending players that are potential sales we could make if we bring back this rare, scarce thing, But of course, contractually, because it's a partnership, you have to work it out with the licensor has to be the one that says, yes, we're totally cool with being involved with TERA again. Usually they just do that for a promotional thing at the time. It's a one and done deal. It's not like a perpetual, you have a license to forever sell Hello Kitty shit in your store. That's not how those things work. I think it was like 2 weeks. It wasn't like the Attack from Titan was like 4 weeks. From the day it launches, you have 4 weeks. You shut it off 4 weeks later. That's it. Can never be sold again. Right? But with our own stuff, we didn't do that. With our own stuff, people didn't feel a sense of urgency. When we tried doing the scarcity thing, I think if I could go back and redo it, I would have done it, and I would have announced the retirement of something in the store at the time. Mm-hmm. To plant that psychological seed that, oh, they're never going to sell that again. They're shutting shit down. They're saying, we have so much new stuff coming in, we're just going to start shutting down this old stuff. So if you didn't get it, now's your last chance to get it. And keep in mind, you buy it now and you play the game 2 years from now, someone else is going to come into the game and they can't get it. And now you're the cool dude on the block that has, the I was going to say, like, I'm trying to think of one of the goofy, like, awful mounts that we got that none of us liked. But I was going to say, like, just some goofball mount or something that you're just like,
the police car patty.
Yes, you got that, and like nobody wants it. But 2 years from now, somebody's gonna be like, "Son of a bitch! I wish I could get that thing." One guy, and he'd be like, "Man, I would spend $300. I give you $400 for that thing." And we're like, "And we don't sell it anymore. It's gone." So if you created that kind of scarcity, I think that can work. I think our attempt at creating like a store that had a level of curation and scarcity wasn't successful because there was no fear that any of that shit wasn't coming back. The Fortnite's the same thing. There's stuff in there. They don't ever announce it, but there's stuff that has not been back in the game since, season 2 or chapter, whatever. They've changed their whole season chapter structure. But like the second actual battle pass, at that season, they sold stuff then that's never been made available ever since. And the fact that they do their battle pass stuff is all unique. So you buy the battle pass and what you earn in that thing, it's all unique, right? And then at the after the season's over, that's it. There is not an opportunity to ever get any of that stuff again. You might get something that's a knockoff or a recolor of it or something, but you won't get that thing that you wanted. So that drives that FOMO. We have not missed a battle pass since we started playing the game, right? Because we always wanted to make sure that we were like, it's $9.50, man, and we get all of these costumes and stuff, and all we have to do is play the game to do it, and we get these things, and why not? For $9, you're getting 20 times more than you would just get off a single thing you'd buy in the store. So why wouldn't you do it, right? Make it to where it's like a no-brainer. But we never got a chance to do that. We did try it with the what was the name? I'm blanking totally on it. Where we took over the welcome window and we put the daily deals, right? The daily deals store in. We tried creating something there. I created this insane schedule. It was all manual, of course, no tool. It's all manually go in and upload an XML with times on it or something.
Yeah.
I can't.
Thanks for leaving that to me on Closers, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There you go. Closer. Well, I didn't do the one on Closers. You can thank SRAM for that. I had to pick it up from SRAM and David Whitty. I am responsible for making sure that it made its way into the window for TERA though. But yeah. So again, there's so many. I have nothing but like I have so many personal opinions about it that I try not to let those things completely. But it's impossible for me to avoid those. But like I said, I don't really enjoy like the free to play aspect. I would rather everybody has a chance to buy the thing that they want. If it's a little bit cheaper, that's fine. We could put a couple little things about it. But that whole like whale feeding thing, I don't like that at all. I really dislike the let's put something in there. Have you watched Mythic Quest? Oh my God, you have to watch that show. I know you don't have anything Apple, so I don't know how you're going to watch it.
I am not part of the Apple ecosystem.
Maybe I'll have to help you watch it via less than legal means at some point. But Mythic Quest is actually Ubisoft is the partner on that show. But it's Rob McElhenney from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia did the show about an MMO company launching their first expansion. It's called Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet because Mythic Quest is the name of the game and Raven's Banquet is the name of the first expansion they're making. And they have so much of what you're talking about on this stream and your conversations you're having with all these different people are literally topics that they cover in the show. There is a monetization manager in the show that's played by, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the guy from Community, the Middle Eastern guy from Community.
Oh,
what is his name?
I don't remember his real name. Yeah.
Community. Anyway, he's the monetization designer. He's the guy who comes up with stuff, and I'm making a sword that's $25,000. No one's ever going to buy that thing, and then someone buys it on day 2. And he's like having a crisis of conscience where it's like, oh my God, I made this thing. It was 25. That was some kid's probably college education. Like, I can't believe I made something like that. It's stuff like that, you know? It's so there's no right answer. It's really by what you like to do and what you don't like to do. But I do know that there was a lot of resistance when we were talking about monetization with Korea liked the Korean dev team really liked a surefire bet as far as monetization went. They felt like we had done enough experimentation. I think this is my opinion of what I think they thought. I think they thought that we had done enough experimentation, that we had found the business model, and that the business model did not need to be updated. We could add in different ways of selling the same type of objects and for the same amounts of money, but we didn't need to explore other avenues. We didn't need to try to figure out other ways to make money. Like, just put the rare thing in the loot box, direct sell the other one. Done. There's no reason to mess with the formula. The formula works. And as I said earlier, when no one can give me a really good reason why not to try something different, like when the answer is, well, this is just the way it's always been done and it works. Okay, well, is that the bar we set for everything we do? It works. That's not the bar I hold my car to. How's your car, Sean? It works. No, I want my car to be a decent car. I want it to run. I want it to get from point A, but I don't want to worry about it. I want to make sure it has upkeep. I want to make sure it's decently clean. Like, that's not my bar for things. It's just to say, the thing works, I guess.
So I guess I'm curious. I didn't really get into this with TERA, but I did when I moved over to Closers. And with Closers, I didn't make monetization decisions. I could have, like, there was web space. We had a web store and we could do boxes, and I should have probably focused on doing that a lot. There was a lot of opportunity for me to learn there, and we did daily deals, but what was coming was what was coming. What was the items there were the items there. So I'm curious, like, with all of your experience, not just on TERA, not just on Closers, but through the industry as a whole, how much of that is the publisher doing monetization? Like, if we're taking just what the developer has created and we're marketing it, promoting it, how much control does a publisher actually have on what the monetization is?
Well, I think it's the publisher's responsibility to guide the developer through what the best business decisions are. Look, developers are great at developing games. If they were great at publishing them and coming up with monetization strategies and understanding a business, how business works, they would do it themselves. They don't. So someone needs to stand up to them and tell them, here's what we can offer you. We're your partner. We're going to do the same thing Keaton, that I did with you. What are your strengths? Your strengths are you've got 7 years experience at that point in time on the game. You know live ops up and down. You interface with the live ops team constantly. You understand that. You're good at that. You know what to do with that. Maybe it's not what you want to do. Maybe you want to expand beyond that, but it's what you're good at. So for the time being, that's your wheelhouse. That's the thing that I'm going to put in as your responsibility, because I think that's the thing. You're going to be better at that than me, right? I am not the lead singer of this band. I'm the bass player. I'm just the guy that's real good at doing the thing that I'm doing. But I can recognize that you're real good at what you do, so I need you to do that, right? So you kind of need to have. I feel like it's the publisher's responsibility to go to the developer and say, "Hey, look, I know you like loot boxes. I get it, and you're going to keep putting out stuff, but why don't you put out this stuff and you explain to us, you communicate with us, you express to us what this thing means to the game, and let us figure out how best to," and I hate to use this word because I'm sure people would hate to hear it this way, but I don't mean it exploit as in to literally exploit exploit people for the thing. I'm not trying to trick people into buying it, but I'm trying to make it as enticing and as easy for everybody to get, right? And I think it is the publisher's job to put the developer kind of in their place and let them understand you are great at making games. You are great at developing and designing and the intricacies that go into making games and these items and these different things. But if you were great at publishing games too, you'd be doing that, and you're not. You come to us. So here's what we can do for you. We can help guide you. We can give you this lane and say, look, you create items that are like this, and we'll tell you the best way to sell. We will try to optimize what you can make off of this. And it's not because everything's about money, but the developer has to pay, the development studio has to pay all of their developers money. And they have to make that money based off of probably royalties that are being paid to them by the publisher, right? So they're already they have to make percentages of a percentage work. And then we have to do the same thing as the publisher. We also have to take a percentage of the percentages and make that work to keep our lights on, keep the servers up, meet our end of the bargain, which is you develop the game and we'll make all the other things happen, right? We'll keep the game up and running. We'll get servers up. We're going to get you marketing. We're going to get you PR. We're going to get you interviews. You're going to be in all the magazines. We're going to sell your stuff. We're going to create a store for you. I think that the difference between Closers and TERA was that Closers, I feel like that team from the very beginning was very invested, or at least their role they were taking on was as a partial publisher of the game. And I believe in some territories they actually are the publisher for the game. So I think that was the big difference for me.
Well, now in almost every territory they're the publisher of the game.
Oh, are they now? Okay. But now in Korea, even Bluehole wasn't the publisher in Korea.
Right.
Nexon is, right? So they're still leaning on another publisher. And then for them to work with other publishers and think that, well, what works for Nexon is going to work for En Masse. Different territories. The reason you're going to a different territory isn't just the legal reasons of, well, we can't, we have you do business with somebody in that country or things like that. It's also because you're expecting them to have some level of expertise in what that country or what that territory is like. What goes over, what doesn't go over. And if you run into a wall where nobody wants to listen and everybody thinks they know the best answer when they're not the people, when they're not the group who maybe initially were the ones who, reached out to set up a publishing deal, then, I do feel like it's their publisher's responsibility. I think the developer should not have to worry about that. You make great content. We will help you. We will make sure that it's out there and sold to maximize whatever we can get out of it.
So
and when they're fighting with you about that, then it becomes eventually you just get worn down and go, okay, look, I'll put the fucking rare thing in the loot box and I'll put the other thing up for $20 on the store. Boring. I've literally a fucking monkey could do this. Like, why does it matter? Why do you even care? Why don't you just do this yourself then? What do you need me for? Right?
Yeah.
I would be leaning on them. If I was a developer, I'd be like, motherfucker, I just created the greatest golden dragon you've ever seen. And you better tell me how the hell you're going to sell the shit out of this thing. And I want to hear something new and crazy and weird and off the wall. And I want you to like blow up the industry with this shit. More often than not, what I heard a lot from different developers that I've worked with was just rinse and repeat. Because that's what you do when you develop a game, right? You do a lot of rinse and repeat. I code this thing, and then I grab that piece of code and I paste it there, and I paste it there, and I paste it there. Like there's this kind of like there's a piece of it that's like there's a monotony to it that's good. It's necessary for the game to be developed properly, but that's not necessarily the world that publishing lives in. When you're standing at all those corners, and you have to also be the meat shield. Who goes? I was going to give you this actually earlier. I was actually thinking earlier today about this example, and now it's escaping me. But I was thinking, as the publisher, as en masse, you will get people complaining to you about things that you have absolutely, positively zero control over. It is 100% a development decision or a design decision, or it's just an item that's just kind of like, okay, I'm sorry you don't like the police car. Somebody did. Some people bought it. It wasn't a huge. The thing we learned is that maybe not a lot of people want to buy police cars in the hyper fantasy game. Who would have, I guess it's an experiment. At least we know it didn't work or that well. At least But who goes to? Let's see. I'm trying. If you buy Duracell batteries from Target, and you get home, and you load up your flashlight with those Duracell batteries, and they don't work, they're fucking dead. You go, fucking Duracell batteries. All right, I'm going to go to Target. I'm going to go bitch at the customer service at Target about giving me new batteries because these batteries are dead. Or do you write to Duracell and say, hey, I bought batteries from Target and they were dead? No,
you go to Target.
You go to Target and you go, hey, why did you sell me dead batteries? Now, how the fuck did the person that there know they were dead batteries? They have no idea those batteries were dead. No one goes back and says that. So part of being a publisher is you are a meat shield for the developer, right? You're going to take the brunt. You're going to take lots of heat for a lot of things. And that's fine. Like that's part of the deal. I think that's part of what you sign up for. That's part of my cut in that's part of our cut in the percentage when we split up the revenue at the end of the day is, well, we got to pay this. We were also the meat shield for that. We took all the heat for that. Hey, Zine Code took all the heat for that one. You know where that came from? It didn't come from us going, we really need to have Zine Code in this game. It came from, we have a security hole, and developers saying, why don't you guys have any kind of Zine Code or anything like that running on your launcher? Oh, I guess we need to do that to make you happy, right? Like, that wasn't anything that came like right out of our heads and where we just could not wait to get, oh man, I cannot wait to piss off everybody in TERA tomorrow. It's going to be so much fun. It is not at all where it comes from, right? It comes from an agreement between us and the developer that there's a problem and we need to try to solve it. But also, they're kind of dictating, saying, you need to have this. Okay, well, did anybody go after Bluehole and say, Bluehole, why did you make en masse do that? No, they said, en masse, why did you do that? And that's part of the job. I got beat up quite a bit for that, and it wasn't because I was trying to piss everybody off. It was because we needed to do it. We did it, and that's part of the job. Sometimes, as a product manager especially, so you just have to lean into it and go, hey, getting the shit kicked out of you sometimes it's chicken soup for the soul, right? It keeps you humble. It keeps you knowing. I don't know every fucking thing in the world. I'm very aware of it. I'm hyper aware of that. And I definitely know that things like that bring it up to me and make me very aware of I need to have more customer empathy. I need to remember what it was like being in customer support, and I need to remember what it's like to be a player and dealing with that, right? It was a very humbling moment for me, and it wasn't because I was being yelled at and felt like I did something wrong. Instead, it made me think, man, the thing I did wrong was I really wish I would have had a little more empathy around what it would be like to be a regular player that was not maliciously using this thing. And then all of a sudden, the thing I love, the thing I'm so passionate about that I'm going to jump on a forum and call people horrifying names for disagreeing with me because I'm so passionate about this game. I got to remember that that's where that comes from. That's coming from a place of passion. They love this game so much that the idea of them being blocked from doing something because they weren't doing anything wrong, but they were running a piece of software that, whether or not the TOS says that they're supposed to have it, whatever, that sucks, man. That really sucks to be that player and feel like you just got the wind knocked out of you, you know? That's the thing I learned from it. That's, you know, so that's what I think. Going back to the monetization thing, I'm sorry, I keep going on the side cuts like that, but it really is like, I think it's the publisher's job to keep the developer in check. The developer is not talking to the customer on a daily basis. They read you saw forum reports and stuff, man. You can read that stuff all day long and you can interpret it however you want. You can put as much confirmation bias and prove whatever point you want to prove with that kind of data, right? So sometimes you have to just go, you got to go, I'm good at this and they're good at that, and I'm going to count on them being the one to tell me, like, what's the best way to monetize this game, or what's the best way to sell these swimsuits, or, hey, this swimsuit is really inappropriate and we don't feel comfortable selling this, and you've got to back us on that. As a developer, you have to understand that, look, you can't, unless you're making, you can't make, if you make something and it doesn't work in one territory, you have to just be aware that, like, culturally there's a lot of differences and things like that, but you have to listen to the publisher. You have to count on the publisher to be able to give you that information properly. If you don't, then you didn't have a great relationship to start off with, right?
So how there's you keep driving towards this idea that it's the publisher's responsibility to make it work, to provide it to provide the success level to what you're being given. And that ties into another point or another piece of the puzzle that I really wasn't involved in and didn't pay attention enough to while we were on TERA, that once I got to closers, I was like, I don't know how to do this. And that's the marketing side of things. I remember the early days. And one of the people that was in your interview, Inmass, had an internal marketing team. I can't remember what his name was, Matt something. But
Matt something, I can't remember either.
But before that, there were a couple other people, all the way back to the very, very beginning. And eventually we got to where we were working with an external team that had been there kind of the whole time, but they were really working out. They were doing real good, and everybody loved and trusted them. So we started working with them. But I don't think I was ever involved in any marketing plans, any marketing decisions, or any communication. So once I got over to closers, we were working with that external team, and I was going to a couple of people internally. I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, people ask, what's the marketing plan? And I don't know what to do. How do I do it? And it took me a long time, and I shifted about. And I think this is a conversation for us to have later on, because it's very, very closers. But I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even realize that external team was the marketing team for Inmass.
Right.
I didn't understand that they had complete visibility into what we were doing. I thought they were just some third-party vendor that you shared certain things with. But then when they did come to me, like, it was like, do an email campaign, do a video. And I was like, I don't know how much of that's useful, because that's all traditional. And Inmass was trying to get away from traditional. Those things didn't really show success. I didn't have metrics. And I was very confused. And I look back, I remember we did news posts because I was involved in those, but for the larger part of it, I am absent any recollection of TERA marketing. What was the marketing plan? How did that work when you were there?
Well, when I first started, we still had that marketing. There was that marketing guy, right? And then after he had left and we had no longer had any internal marketing folks, we leaned a lot on Denominator. he came up with a lot of, because he came from a marketing background.
He was marketing at Inmass originally, yeah.
Oh, okay, was he?
Yeah.
Well, he ended up being a huge resource for me to help me like understand what needles I should be moving, what needles I should be looking at with things like why do I do an email campaign? And I remember bluntly asking him one day, like, why do we do an email campaign with every build? Isn't everybody who's playing the game going to be aware on Thursday when they walk into the game that this new thing is there? And it was like, well, the email campaign is aimed at trying to get people to reactivate and things like that. Oh, okay. So you're looking at reactivation numbers. What about new people? Because new people aren't going to see an email that are coming out. And he's, well, that's something different. That's coming, new user acquisition is a different category of it. And so to be honest, I've never had a really good rap. Like I said earlier, I've never had a really good rap on marketing. It's never been the thing that I've been very interested in. I mean, I'm interested in it in as far as what can it do to help me, but as far as like wanting to understand what's the intricacies around the timing of an email campaign versus, how many days before something hits versus the day it comes out versus having coverage hitting versus putting press releases out and all this. To me, it all seems very much like running your own Facebook page. Like, it's just very much like, if I was to tomorrow put out a game, or if I was put out, let's say tomorrow I was putting out a product on Facebook, I would just go, all right, well, I'm just going to message all my friends and tell them to go buy it. Wait, that's an email campaign, right? And I'm going to post a picture every day at 10 o'clock in the morning. All right, well, there's my ads that are going to get out there. And maybe I'll maybe I'll spend $5 or $6 to make sure anybody who's ever marked that they're interested in punk rock music sees this record go out on that time or whatever, like, I understand. It seems kind of rudimentary. If you don't have somebody thinking outside the box, it all seems really rudimentary to me. Like,
so
it just seems like, which I think was why we got rid of, or why we didn't have any more internal people doing it, and it became something we did through an agency. And their answers were exactly what I would expect their answers to be. Like, I think more so on closers, especially, it was about what are the big exciting things that you guys can help us wrap around, and then everything else was very, very rinse and repeat. Every month was like, okay, here's this week's update. It's a small one, so send out an email, put this thing in the store, do this, get a press release together by this day, get a news post that links back to that by this day. It was just very same thing. But then you'd have a big character release, right? For us, I think that was the biggest thing in closers, was any new character, buy or whatever. Then it was like, okay, 2 months before, I want to start a reveal. I want to start building anticipation for this thing, right? There's already anticipation from the existing player base, but I want to keep them playing. I got to keep them around for 6 weeks to wait for this. Not a lot of people like to wait these days for things.
No.
So I got to make them wait 6 weeks for this to happen. So every week I got to give them a reason to keep playing that somehow is going to pay off by making them getting that thing in the end either easier or cheaper or whatever that is. Understanding it better, whatever that is. That was where I really leaned on them to help. But then the content from the developer side, and we had given the feedback that these are the updates that move the needle, are these things. These other things you're doing move no needles. They do nothing. They might maintain, or it's just we already know the direction, the percentage of decline every week. I don't know if people know this or not, but when you're working on these games like TERA and things like that, basically you're constantly losing players. You're always losing players, and then you're gaining players, and you're losing players, and you're gaining players. And what the best case scenario is, you are gaining players at the same rate that you are losing players, and so you just have this, in the end, that nets out to just kind of a flat line, right? Which I don't necessarily like flat lines. I think, to me, if you're not going up, if you think you're maintaining, you're probably going down. But theoretically, you're just trying to maintain this kind of flat line, right? That's the we are in we have our core players, and then we have people who are leaving, and we have people who are coming in, and we have just as much interest from new people as we have disinterest from people who have played and have done what they wanted to do, and they've finished and they've moved on.
The idea being, or the reality being, when you release a product, you have a ginormous push. You throw a lot of your money there, so the release of a product is going to be your highest player population.
Right. So now the MMO world is interesting because you not only do you have your initial release, but now you have the opportunity for something like closers, where we had to update every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks you have a reason to tell people about something that's happening, right? And so, but that is a tiresome schedule. Who wants to be hit every 2 weeks? What emails do I get from any company that I want to hear from every 2 fucking weeks? Nobody. There's nobody that I want to hear from every 2 weeks saying like, "Hey guys, this week we've got this." Like, I even turn off like stuff from like Safeway and crap like that from the grocery store. I'm like, I have to eat food and I don't even care about what you have on sale this week. Like, I'm sick of hearing from you. So you do have to also figure out how do you make a splash when you have created so much white noise by talking to people all the time that somehow you have to be able to talk all super duper monotone, and we're going to keep talking, and all of a sudden I'm going to go like this, and then I'm going to talk all monotone. Like, that's basically what we're doing, right? Like, we're hitting you constantly with this monotone sound, but then all of a sudden we have to generate some huge spike, because when I look at this over 6 months and I go every month every month we're going down by this percentage, so that graph is going like this. The only way to never cross that line, which is the line you never want to go below, which is like your operational costs, right? If we go below operational costs, that means now the game costs more than it makes. And what company? I mean, anybody can look at their checking account and understand how that works. Eventually, if you go below the zero amount, you no longer have money. You no longer can spend on anything, including the people who are working on the game. The game's got to go away, right? And so you never want to hit that point. So what you need is these little what we called them like the parachute moments, where it's like I'm falling, and all of a sudden someone shoots you back up in the air, and you can keep falling and falling, but they shot you up another 100,000 people or whatever that number is, you know. And now you've got time. You've bought yourself more time, but it's a constant game. Working on an MMO, I used to say, is like working at the Indy 500, right? I'm working at the Indy 500, and I have to change. I work on a pit crew that's got to change the tires on an Indy car. But the catch is that Indy car isn't going to stop in the pit row. I have to do it while the car is moving. So the car is driving, and I got to figure out how to change the tires on a moving car in the middle of a race that eventually has an end. All these games eventually have an end. There will be an end point for all of them at some point, right? They don't last forever. But I want to make them last as long as I can, so I want to keep changing those tires. I want to keep pouring oil in. I want to keep adding gas. I want to keep that thing moving. But I know that eventually it's going to cross that line where it's no longer feasible for that car to be on there. It's not making money enough anymore for us to be able to afford new tires. Mm-hmm. So now the car is just going to eventually run out of gas and die.
That's another thing I want to talk about. I remember we were in one of the KPI meetings, and I think Cochise, we were discussing something. I don't remember what the exact topic was, but I remember Cochise brought up operational costs, and he asked everyone, the product managers at the table, do you know what your operational cost is? Do you know what your break even is? And I think it caught a lot of people off guard. And I was too junior to really know anything. I was being introduced to all this, right? So it was all over my head at that point. But I remember then you turned and you started working around, or you then went and started working with Josh and a bunch of other people to find out the operational costs of, you were on closer at the time. But I'm curious about that. That's something that, when I look back, again, I don't remember us talking about that. I always remember, us looking at the builds that are coming in, looking at previous months, looking at what we had going forward. Like Classic server was getting pitched, all these things. We were always looking at that, but I don't ever really remember us as a product team leading the charge in what tech we're spending money on or what our server cost is. I know Josh did that from time to time, and I know there were some meetings based around that. But when Cochise brought that up in the meeting, it seemed like maybe we had been missing that point. At InMass specifically, but at other companies, for being a product manager, the position you were in, like, how much of your time is based on that? Like, That's the other part of the equation, right? How much are you making,
Yeah.
but how much are you spending?
I think the difference there, well, interestingly, en masse is definitely a unique creature in that like, so normally what you would have is you would have a business person who works there whose specific job, and we had business people that worked there that sat across from our HR team, but we didn't have regular check-ins to know how, like, what was going on. In fact, it was more of a one-way street where we would report information to them, but not a lot was ever handed back. I never was given anything, at least. I won't say that nobody was because I can't speak for everybody else. I know that I wasn't given a lot of feedback around it. And when we were asked that day, I remember that. We were asked that. And it was like, well, like I was on closure. I remember what it was on TERA, but then again, I had even questioned the TERA one because I remember seeing that number and being like, when was this number created? Like, on the old BI tool, the old business information tool that we used, there used to be this chart that had like your gross income or whatever for the month, right? And that had a red line that was hard coded in, and that red line was the operational costs, right? And so as long as you cross that every month, you were just always going like, gotta get past that red line. The sooner I get past that, the easier I can sleep. But I questioned at one point, when was that? And I remember everything, even to Gnome, I think it even said, I think he was like, I don't think I've ever seen it move. And I was like, well, how long have you been here? It's like, because there's no fucking way this game costs as much in 2018 to operate as it cost in 2012 when it had like, 10 times the player base and probably 8 times the servers. And like, there's no way that it costs as much now as it did then. But if that's the number that we're using, then we need real numbers, Sorry. This thing makes my head itch like crazy. I don't have bugs or anything, folks. It's just this stupid thing on top makes my head itch. And I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know what it was for closers. And I remember specifically going right back to the business folks and being like, I need to know how much it costs to operate this game. And they gave me that was when it started being shared. I think it was Dave. Was his name David? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. David shared this really awesome, complex spreadsheet that was the finance team's breakdown, right? But normally what you would have is a business person who their job was specifically to be that point person between the entire product team and the finance team to keep track and keep tabs on it and make sure that product team is reporting everything to the finance team properly. First off, I caught a couple times inconsistencies in the way we reported our money, and I remember having numerous conversations about that with you, with Denome, with SRAM, with a bunch of people about like, hey, we're counting money here that's not being used. Free EMP was one of the big ones, right? Like that was one of the ones where it was like, we are not counting this right. When we give this stuff away, we are not counting it correctly. So at the end of the month, when we take this money off, like we are taking off money, even though we sold this much, we had to use free EMP first or whatever the rules were. And so like, we are not getting that money. We're not making that at the end of the month. It says we are, but we're not. That's where the discrepancy is.
The issue I remember then was we were basing projection off all EMP when at the end we were calculating revenue based off just what EMP was actually purchased. So our projection as a product manager, the number that we're using is just not the right number. The real number existed. As far as finance went, like they were never wrong. We were just for some reason staring at the wrong number, making a projection, and then trying to hold ourselves accountable to it when realistically
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I remember that once we started getting those sheets, and we helped finance understand it, because even they were a little confused as to why was this discrepancy between the numbers that they had and the numbers that we had, and there was all these things we were talking about with that, and there was a lot of it that was like, man, I just feel like everyone's got different goalposts, and we should have a very clear single goalpost that we're all aiming for, So en masse, I felt like there was something that maybe that existed at some point, but I felt like that no longer existed. And if that was being thrust onto the shoulders of the product manager, it was only communicated to me when things like that would happen, where it was like, hey, what's your operational cost as of today? Like, that's a really great question. I should know the answer to that, but I don't. I know what I think it is, but I have nothing to back that up. And honestly, even after I dug into it, I still don't really have a lot to back it up. I don't see receipts. I see things I'm paying for. And also, TERA was such a beast and a weirdo with that, because TERA was also, because it's wound into the DNA of en masse, TERA was paying for shit for all kinds of games. I remember having that conversation with Denome numerous times, like, hey, I don't want to pay for the entire company's fucking server costs. Why is it that we're paying for all of that? Well, no, they're figuring that out. No. Someone's figuring it upstream, but guess what? At the end of the month, we have to go into a meeting with Commander and everybody else and report our numbers. No one's saying, oh, well, don't forget, everybody. Don't forget. TERA is also paying for this. No one's saying that. They're saying TERA is short.
Yeah.
Why is TERA short?
And I was like, from a product manager team, it always seemed to me, once I started working on closers, it seemed to me like there was the finance team, there were all those people, and they had their numbers. They were tracking their things, and everything made sense to them, and everything was accurate for them. But it seemed like I was too far away from them. I didn't have a tie-in to them to really make my KPIs, my metrics, my projections make sense to them. We were just working two different sides of we were working, I don't even know how to say it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, so when I would communicate with another product manager, we would understand each other. When I'd go communicate with the finance team, they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'd be like, well, here's how we do it. And they're like, that's dumb. Here's how we do it. And we're like, well, that's dumb for me, because like, if I'm thinking, here's a product, how much EMP are players going to spend? There's no reason for me just to think about the money that the EMP they spent money on. We have bonus EMP and we have free EMP, and that's how much money people are going to spend. So how much free EMP and bonus EMP do people have right now? Because that's something that's going to be spent. But then when you're in finance, no, like, what's your real EMP? What's the revenue you brought in? Like, yeah, I get it. That's a real number. That's what, but
that's the weirdness. But also, it's also the weirdness of having, that's a completely different subject that sometime we should talk about, which is, fake currencies.
Yeah.
Your own digital currency, because that's where it creates the weirdness.
Yeah.
Because digital currency isn't real money. And what you just said, which is, I wasn't sure how much people knew about that, but that's the way that works. Like, we only counted money that was spent. If Joe Schmo goes and spends $20 on EMP today, we don't go at the end of the month, well, we made $20 off Joe Schmo. Because Joe Schmo spent $20 in EMP, and then he went and bought 3 loot boxes and spent $4.50. At the end of the month, we say we made $4.50 off Joe Schmo. That $20 is parked away. It's like you bought into a bank account. If everybody bought EMP tomorrow, they could spend $200,000 on EMP tomorrow and make no purchases in the store for a week. And the company theoretically, makes no money for that week. Well, that game makes no money for the week. Because of the weirdness of how, and I don't understand, and I know that there's laws, there's all kinds of weird shit wrapped around digital currency. And that's why, again, another thing to not be into microtransactions and all that stuff is because of that. Like, just sell it for dollars. If we're going to do that, just sell everything for dollars. And then I felt like I always felt like there was this, like, I'm sure it was born out of some skeezy way slimy marketing way to get money out of people. If all I'm talking about is fake money, fake weird credits that you have in an account, you'll spend that shit like crazy. Gold? Yeah, here's some gold. Throw some gold at that. I don't have any fucking gold in real life. But what you aren't putting together is that gold has a dollar value because you took your credit card and transferred some amount of money from your real bank account to their bank account, and in exchange got this right here. You got nothing. You got these ones and zeros. You got a number on a little digital readout that you can't do anything with except trade that for some kind of an in-game item. And the only reason I think companies that was ever brought up in the first place, I'm not saying Enmass did it this way, Enmass was following suit with what the industry was doing, but somebody somewhere down back a few years ago thought, when people don't know they're spending $19.95 on a costume for a character in game, they think they're spending 1,995 fake credits. They're far more likely to spend that money than they are otherwise. When I show them a $sign in front, their assholes clench up. They go, "Hey, I don't want to spend $19.95. That's too much money." But when I say, no, drop $20 and you get all of this in-game currency that you can use. But I mean, come on! It doesn't take it doesn't take an economics major to figure out if you get 2,000 EMP for $20, what's the value of one EMP, right? It's 1 cent, guys. It's literally apples to apples here. We're just calling them different. It's 1,995 cents is what that costs. So because of that, it really murkies up the pond, and I think that's where it screwed us up, the product team up with finance. No one had ever really questioned. It never became really apparent until we started bringing up all this free and bonus EMP issues. We were like, it's really weird because we don't account for that.
Yeah. Which makes your example earlier a little different. If you go spend $200 today and buy EMP, which nobody can because we turned off EMP sales. Yay. But if you spent $200 of EMP and you got $40 worth of bonus EMP, your in-game value is $240. You go and spend $35 in game.
Right.
That bonus EMP gets calculated out first. So if that's all the money you spent that month, you're thinking, well, I just paid en masse $240, which is true, but you didn't pay TERA anything. You spent $35 of your bonus EMP in TERA. You saw $5 of bonus EMP left, and we calculate 0 revenue from you that month because bonus is calculated first.
And again, I am 100% sure that there are laws which are the reason why they have to do it that way. To me, the more fair way for a publisher to be able to do something like that would be to say, we don't use that spent EMP as actual dollars towards a game. It's a percentage of the overall revenue that was spent on the publisher towards that game. Yeah. Well, so instead of saying it was Joe Schmo bought $200 and got $40 of free EMP with it, they got $200, and so then now they have $240 of fake money sitting in their account, 40 of which is bonus free money. We don't get to count it. It's fake money. It's monopoly money. Then when they do spend that $35 free of EMP on there, at the end of the month, it should say, okay, so people bought in total, $1 million worth of EMP this month. And TERA accounted for this much of that spending in there, even with that free stuff. Because what you should be measuring at that point is the interest in the game, not how much dollars that thing brought in. Because the players, otherwise, which is what I was proposing at one point, was remove free EMP and give them something else that can't be spent on the same thing. Right, kind of like what they did with the TERA reward store, right? Like the idea that there was credits and points, right? Yeah. The idea there, well, one of them was used to level you up, and the other one is used to spend in the store. Well, you could kind of do the same thing and say, like, okay, look, you have this store. Oh no, actually, what's a better example is what was his little name? T-Cat.
Yep.
The little T-Cat store, and we had whatever the coins were. I can't remember what they were called. God, it's been so long. Whatever his coins were that he accepted, right? He had his own shop.
Yeah, we turned him off, though. We weren't using him.
Yeah, right, I know. We eventually cleared him out and turned him off. But I was saying what you could have done, where I was suggesting at one point, was give those T-Cat tokens and EMP. EMP is all real-world money. It is 1 to 1 cent. 1 EMP equals 1 cent, right? It's just an in-game currency you can spend across our catalog of games. And then you give them tokens for that bonus to say, now there's a special shop that has all or most of the exact same things, but they're in this free, fake. It's not even. It doesn't even relate to the currency that you really are spending in game that is real money currency. Because then we don't even have to count that shit. It's a free gift with purchase. It's like when we did with the free token. That's why I was always doing that thing with the shirts and skins tokens and all those things. The idea there was to say, look, spend this money and get this currency, but then you get this cool other side currency that has nothing to do with this that you can spend. We don't have to count that. Finance doesn't give a shit about a TCAT token. They don't care what the fuck people are spending that on. They can buy everything in the game they want with that. What they care about is this right here. And then you could just count that money as spent when it comes in. And you don't have to count it. Now, I'm sure, again, I don't know the laws. There's probably laws that say you can't do that. Because I'm sure there's some weird way around it. But that's why I was proposing to get rid of bonus EMP. And everybody was very against it. And I, in hindsight, it was probably a terrible idea to get rid of that because it reels people in to buy, buy this because you get this for free. But
well, I remember back in like League of Legends when you bought their currency, I can't remember what it is now. Like they would have the different tiers and you buy and like when you buy a new MMO, there's always like they'll give you some of their currency in their packages, which we would do sometimes too, but that's still an accounting nightmare because that's not purchased EMP, that's still bonus EMP. But I also remember hearing from our marketing team, the outside vendor, they said never discount your currency. And I was always like curious, like, why would you not? And I know we looked at it and it was like for closers and for TERA, there were two different purchasing behaviors. TERA, I think they bought the lower packs and closers bought the higher bonus packs or something like that.
Yep.
There's so much to that. And I agree with you, but I wasn't there. Like it was something I wasn't a part of at the very beginning. I don't know why we did the bonus structure.
The no discounting EMP thing, I think, is another thing that creates an accounting nightmare because then they have to track what was sold for a lower amount of money, right? And then they have to track that money and how that particular money was spent separately because they can't report. You can't say, I only charged you, okay, I'm going to say $10 for 1,000 EMP, right? But I can't say, I charge you $9. You got 1,000 EMP, and at the end of the day, when I go to file my my financials at the end of the month, say, well, you spent 1,000 EMP. That's $10 in EMP. No, you didn't. You spent $9 in EMP. You got 1,000, but you only spent $9. So it's the opposite problem of the bonus problem, in that you would have to then track the real currency that was purchased for less money because you need to know exactly how much of that was really spent to know how much of it you can really count. So I think that's why they say don't discount it. I still think that's kind of a weird, flimsy reason, but again, I am definitely not an expert when it comes to like financial shit, and I definitely would not like want to deal with having to track. You obscure the money. It's almost like money laundering. You obscure it in so many ways so that the consumer aren't fully aware of how much they're spending, which is kind of shady, I mean, in general. I'm not saying en masse was shady doing it. I'm saying that in general, the process of, and then we were talking about earlier, of buying fake currency with real world money to go spend it in a game is kind of a shady proposition. You're just trying to obscure your money laundering how much they spent. Don't remember that you spent $25 on this EMP. Don't remember that. Instead, remember that you got all this cool free stuff beside it, right? Yeah. You got crazy amounts. For $10, you can get 7 billion of this weird currency, right? 7 billion doesn't mean shit. It's all ones and zeros. It doesn't mean anything. You spent $10. That's what means something, but we want to disconnect that from you. We don't want you to remember the $10. We want you to remember what you got for it.
All right,
otherwise, you'll go.
Before we dive too deep into this, we're already at the 2.5 hours.
I know, yeah. I know. It's already late. We're going to have to do this again.
Well, we're still going. We're not done. We just got to move along.
Okay. Okay.
Player sentiment. That was another thing that I didn't really. I remember getting the sentiment reports on TERA, but it wasn't something I really focused on again until I was at closers. And this is something that I've brought up time and time again. Being on the product side, looking at my KPIs, a lot of my job, it was numbers. Like, where are we at? How are we doing? How's this performing? How many users do we have? Blah, blah, blah. But when it came to player sentiment, I never could understand how to connect that. And I was always fighting. Like, so we sent out socials. How many socials should we do this month? Like, how many socials should we do this week? I never could get a real good idea of like, if we do 1, is that good? If we do 12, is that good?
Yeah.
And if, and how are they performing? Like, what should we do? Are we even asking for engagement? Is an image good? Or is it just text? Or should we have a link? Should it link to a video? Where is it linked to? How are our news posts? Like, I remember you were going through that swimsuit spread for closers. Like, this is something a developer wants. Is there any actual ROI for this? What are the what's the player reception? Like, does a player go to that page and actually flip to, and does that lead to sales? Do they like it? Is this engagement? The sensor report, what's coming through from the forums, what's coming, like, there was so much information, but I felt there was so little data. And anytime I would ask for it, it seemed like people were fighting. So here's a question that I've been asking everyone.
Okay.
I believe everything can be measured. I believe everything can be measured. Not every variable can be measured. I'm not saying you can give me a metric for player sentiment, but what I'm saying is, if you run an event, if you do a social post, what behavior did that trigger? Because ultimately, anything and everything that you do should elicit a behavior. You're either going to get a negative response or a positive response. If it does nothing, then don't ever fucking do it again, right? Like, you just did nothing. I spent money on you, you got paid a salary, and nothing happened. So I expect a positive behavior or a negative behavior. Now, there is the possibility that doing what you did kept us even, but holy crap, I don't want to just make some shit up and hope that it's true. So in my head, it seems like if there's a positive response or a possible negative response, there's something to measure there. More people played for longer, more people spent money, something, more accounts were created, or less people logged in, less people spent money, people played for less time. But it seemed like there was always pushback. And what I was wondering was, are the experts we have, are they just not provided the tool set? Did we not train them on how to do metrics? Or is there really this idea, and I keep asking it, even though it seems ludicrous to me, but I ask it because people up high have told me this is true. Is there really no way to measure sentiment? Should you be doing things just because players tell you they like them?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I do think there was a couple things that we were missing out on. I'm going to sneeze, I think. Hold on. I have to mute if I do.
You got to stare up, right? Stare up.
Is that what you got to do?
I don't know. Something about looking at the sun. And I think if you just take salt and if you rub salt straight into your eye, it stops you from sneezing.
I don't, that doesn't sound right.
We could try it.
That doesn't sound right. That's good. That's good TV there, buddy. That's good TV.
That's content. Chat will be right back. Sean Neal's going to rub salt in his eye.
Yeah.
Next on the Eric Andre show.
I'm going to answer you, but I also, in just a second, I want to go back. There were 2 questions that were in here so far. One from Lucky, Lucky made a comment that I agree with, and I wanted to make a point about. And then there was something way much earlier when we first started talking about motivation. But so here's where I think we're missing out on, or what we did miss out on. After working at geocaching, I can tell you that one of the things that we didn't do is we didn't have any hooks in all the places that you would want to put hooks. Right? Like, and by hooks, I mean, you want places for data to feed in, right? So that you can look and see, because you're talking about those behaviors, right? And that is exactly how I would say you would measure it. But you have to have a full support system to track that. That is a job. That is a BI job by itself. That is a person whose job who has sociological and psychological training can look and extrapolate a behavior from data, right? So they can look at it and go, when A happens, in response to that, B happens. So when A happens, when I put out a social post, B happens. I get 5 more accounts that day than I would get on a normal day. On average, I get about 5 more accounts. So that means I need to be able to track from the moment a follower or a person sees that and clicks something through. So it needs to be something clickable, right? I have to track them from that moment all the way through to the end of account creation, into download, into did they log in, into did they make a purchase. Like I need to have every single one of those events tracked, right? That also costs a lot of money for a company to do. So geocaching, we still use the free version of Google Analytics, right? Because it costs like $200K a month or some shit to have Google Analytics. I'm sure Tableau and all these other companies have other things, right? But I do believe you can. I believe, like you, that it is 100% possible to measure those behaviors and give data sets around when A happens, it triggers B to happen, good or bad. But you have to have first. I would say it would be next to impossible, if not just insanely difficult, to do it for something that's been live and released for such a long time that all of your baselines are blown to shit. You would have no idea what to base it off of, right? You would need years of data to, or at least I would say at least a year of data to base it off of. I would need to know, even on the decline, when I posted social posts every month about the new content and gave a link, this was the behavior that happened. Because in January, maybe I had 35 accounts being created every time from those, and in December I only had 25 accounts, but 35 accounts made up 50% of the total accounts that day, whereas at the end of the year, 25 accounts made up 75%. So that's a better number, right? You have less people playing the game in December than you had in January of that year. So you need to have like these baselines, but that has to be built up from scratch, right? You would need to have those hooks in. There were points where I asked to have tracking all over the website, and it wasn't always received in a really positive way that I wanted to have all of this crazy tracking. In fact, I distinctly remember a specific conversation where when I said I want to have click events, which is what you call when people click a button, right? In Google Analytics, everything's based off of events usually and behaviors. And the events are triggered when people do specific actions when they engage with your website, right? Clicking a button, sliding a slider, dropping an arrow, checking a menu, any place they click, anything that they move over in the site. And I was trying to track, I believe it was when we were releasing one of the closers characters, and we were doing one of those like week by week unveils, and I wanted fucking tracking events on everything, anything and everything. That how many times did anybody click the YouTube button? When they did click the YouTube button, when they came back, did they watch the video more than once? Like I wanted to know all this shit, and it was like the amount of work it would take to code all these things in. Are you really going to look at all this stuff?
Yeah, I can. In my head, I'm hearing Mark question all these requests. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a valid question because my answer was, you know what? Probably not. Because this is
data. Give me data.
It's a full-time job to analyze that data, and I have to.
I got to get daily deals going at 10.
I got to set up daily deals.
And then I got a KPI report that's due at 11.
I got a number of products that I need to be up and ready. I need to get them into the store, prepared for the store. I got to get images created. I got to get news posts created. It was just
that
too
banner
much.
file to put together.
Oh, banners and closers. That's something I do not miss. Love the level of control. Hated doing it. But yeah, that's I think that's what you need. So I do agree with you. It is measurable, but that has to have buy-in from day one, and it has to have I think it needs at geocaching. We had it. That's what I was saying. We had I'm trying to think her name. Lee, I think was her name. It was this young lady that worked with our BI team, and that was her job. She was a business analyst. Her job was literally to say, okay, I went through all the click events in this new match that you just, or this new thing that you just released, and here's what was successful.
Yeah.
The header on the page had the most clicks than anything else on the site for the first week. So positive, do that again. Next time you do this, do that. all the work you put into making this animation at the bottom of the page, like
No one scrolled down.
No one scrolled down past the top of the page. Don't make a page bigger than scrolling. Oh my God, that's other arguments I had with web folks. Like, hey, I want everything on one page. Well, can't do that. They got to scroll. Like, if you're making them scroll, you're counting on them being so fucking engaged within the first 5 seconds of looking at that page that they're like, I gotta see all this shit. I gotta just load me up with information. That is, nobody does that. I don't fucking do that for things I'm interested in. I got mad the other day because I had to scroll down a page for something I was actually already buying because I had to see more details about it. I was like, oh my God, are you fucking kidding me? And it was like, oh my, this is ridiculous.
All
of course.
I've got to follow up, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I think this serves as a good question to get to an answer to pry apart my problem. Again, not trying to put you on the spot, but think through this for me. You had Murder Mystery. And I remember this is when I was still QA. I wasn't AP. You were doing this event all yourself. Once I came on as AP, I was doing the events. With Murder Mystery, you were setting that up in the GM tool. And as you stated before, this tool wasn't like a great, perfect thing. It was a back-end thing. It was the customer support team used it, and we used it to set things going. And that's what we used to create events for the most part if we weren't mucking around in data sheets. But it was all manual. You didn't automate any of this. You were setting things up, and it took a lot of work. And that was like, hey, what's Sean Neal? I need to have a meeting with Sean Neal right now. Nope, Sean Neal for the next hour and a half is running an Argon invasion in Baldera. Like, this is what he's doing. I know you put a stupid amount of time into that. If we didn't have the data, if the hooks weren't already there for us to go, this is what my expectation is. This is what's going to come of this. And then to review that afterward and say, this is how it hit. Why did we invest so much time in that? When you and I later on walked into a meeting with Scott James Magner and Fulmore, and they were trying to sell us on Murder Mystery, and we shut that down week after week after week with very simple questions of, how does this push the needle? How is that monetized? And their answer was, it's just fun. You don't have to do that much. We've already got it done. Like, we've already sectioned the time, and we were shutting it down without any real negative to it, just because we didn't see the positive. So I have these two examples of, you push so hard on Argon Invasion, and we've talked about it. I think ultimately we feel that was a positive. That was a great experience for the player base. But you and I, having not that much overall involvement in Murder Mystery, shut it down. Why?
So my feeling about it was that Argon Assault was an experiment, right? To me, the whole Argon Assault thing was, I asked around. I remember when we were first kind of talking about, well, we need to come up with some kind of an engagement event. What kind of an engagement event can we do? And I kind of proposed this idea. I can't remember where. Actually, I don't even remember if I was the one that it came from. I remember I was the one that got stuck with the brunt of the work doing it, but I can't remember. I don't remember. I want to say that I think I had a pretty big hand in coming up with it, with the concept of it and working it out with Fulmore and some other folks, and Space Cats too, I think, was involved at that point, right? Because it was my first year. Space Cats was still there. So to me, it was an experiment because the only things that I knew of that we had done that were these large scale events that were run by the company were like, there was like, didn't they do like tournaments? Wasn't there like some tournament things and things like, and I heard like what a fucking nightmare it was to run those things, right? And so, but those things had been done like 2 years prior too. They weren't super recent. So I didn't have, again, a baseline to know like, well, I don't know. I didn't have a baseline to say, well, what does it look like when we run a large scale community event, right? And so to me, it was an experiment. And the experiment, while successful, again, like I said earlier, for the first few days, it drove lots of engagement. In the end, it went on too long, and the amount of time and knowing the tool. Once I also was my first experience learning all the tools, like really, really learning all the tools. Like all of the intricacies of it, because we did everything from, we bumped up we fucked with their all their numbers for like hit hits, the amount of damage they could do, their hit ratios, their hit points they carried. I mean, it was just crazy amounts of shit that we messed around with. There was so many things to create this event, and then to say, okay, now we're going to do another event that is fully being done just for fun. There's no. I think the big problem for me was I actually had success metrics for what I thought Argon Assault could prove to be successful or not, right? I went into it saying, this is an engagement thing. I want to drive daily logins. I want to drive total session length time, because we knew that it was the number that it was sitting at. It was a good average number. Can I get an extra 30 minutes a day out of these people? Right? I want to engage. I had some engagement metrics that I had in there. When we had the ones from everybody else, for the murder mystery stuff, I felt like we had proven that this kind of large scale engagement based event is great for the first day or two, and then that's it. And that was really all we got out of it. And then the last day, which was just kind of a shit show of us like spawning all kinds of crazy monsters and people getting killed. And it was just fun, right? It felt like you were like at the end of a game when you would shut a game down and you're just like, oh, no holds barred. We're just throwing shit everywhere. That's kind of what it felt like. But Murder Mystery didn't even have that. It was like an out of game engagement, because their original idea involved so much developer time to support.
Yeah.
The original idea had a quest system built into the game,
Custom
which they were like,
NPCs.
just as custom NPCs, custom titles, all of this shit. It was awesome if you had people that were paid to do just that and nothing else. But when you had people that were paid to do translations and writing for the game and creating marketing assets and videos and web page assets, and such a skeleton crew of people, that it didn't make sense that they were taking so many hours to do that they could have been working on just baseline stuff, keeping the game running and marketed properly. That the amount of time that they spent, there was no way we were going to make up enough money or engagement to make up for the money that was spent doing this. That is what we proved with Argon Assault. The money that I was paid to put that together and to run these events on a daily basis, there's no amount of money that we made back from that could have paid for me to do that. I could have been doing any number of other things on the project, on the game, that would have been just as successful.
So the question I have to ask, because this was the question that I was always asked, right, was I'm creating the Summer Claw crab events, right? And that would take a lot of time. We would create the Gordo. We would create the Fat Santas. We would create the little easy, like New Year's fireworks stuff.
Fat Santas is still one of my favorite things in the world. They're so goofy and weird. I love them.
So we're coming full circle here. There's the sense that we as a publisher need to have engaging events just regularly kicking off. But when it came down to it and people were asking me, and you were looking for more of my time, Keaton, I need help with news posts. Keaton, I need to get this done. And I'm like, well, I'm doing this event and I got like 60 hours left of just work to get this event out the door. We never had that metric. We never had that, well, this is what it's bringing. And we would look at, year over year. We would look at GameForge and what events they were running and their year over year versus our year over year and the events we were running. And internally, it seemed like the answer that was always given is these events don't do anything. These events do not drive engagement. But now I'm logging in and I'm playing TERA, and I log in, I do Gilliglade, I do Guardian missions, and I run a couple dungeons, but there's nothing else to do in the game. And the engagement seems like an absolute necessity. So where were we missing it? I mean, I know I'm asking you to go back in time, 3 years? Where were we missing it? What was the detail? Where did we fail at recognizing the power of events and getting them onto a track where they were successful?
The inability to track those KPIs. I mean, what KPIs were we going to track? Daily login, session length. What else is an engagement KPI that we could do? That we could track at with with the tool that we had, what else could we track besides those two things, really? You can't count like new accounts created because you can't. There's nothing to say that someone created unless someone clicked a link that was coming from a news post to create their account specifically based off of an event that you were creating. You have nothing to really say. Well, the reason people came and created accounts is because I was running Argon Assault. People have no fucking idea. That's all late game shit. Only people who already know the game are going to be engaged and stuff like that. I just don't think I think we just didn't do a great job of having like you said earlier, like how do we cut it? We just never had the hooks in place to be able to prove anything. Everything was like had an asterisk behind it or 10 asterisks behind it, right? Like, hey, we made more money this month because of this. Star, and you go to the bottom and it's like, well, but we would please be aware that we can't track click-through rates from emails to know whether those people actually logged in. That right there, by the way, is like one of the most frustrating things to me was that there was like these significant breaks in where you could track people, where they were going and what they were doing.
There's privacy laws, Mr. SeanDynamite.
Yeah. Well, no, not even that. Before all that shit happened, just there were things like, well, we can't know when there was something that I don't want to misquote it. There was definitely something that had to do with like emails or something like that, where you could only track people could get to a certain, you could track them when they got to the launcher. Or you could, or something, or maybe you could only track them from the launcher, but you couldn't track how they got to the launcher. Something like that. Was these major breaks. It was like, okay, well, you're basically saying that there is no way to track anything that I do that's external to inside the game having any effect on whether or not they logged in or not. And I think it was something having to do with, you could tell whether someone opened a mail and if they clicked it, but you couldn't tell anything beyond that. You couldn't tell if they went to a launcher because there was no way to track them because we weren't using a web launcher. We were using a standalone app launcher. There was no way to know that because someone clicked it, then they went to and pressed the play button. And it's like, okay, well then you literally say that there is nothing that you can say that says this led to this because there's nothing in between. There's no bridge. Yeah, I can track them up to here, but I can't, and I can track them from there on, but I can't say there is nothing definitive to say that this led to this. Yeah. So I think that was our own failing for not, our own failing in that, like, we didn't push hard enough to try to solve those problems. We pushed more in the neighborhood of, well, let's just do it and see what happens. And then there just wasn't a discernible bump in anything. I think if anything major would have happened, we would have seen it. Oh, shit. Daily logins went through the fucking roof when we started running Argon Assault. We were looking for it. We needed a major swing to even show us anything was happening. We weren't going to notice blips.
Yeah. If you did a Strongbox event, you would see, oh, look, revenue spiked. If we did a leveling event, we could go, oh, look, a bunch of new characters are created and leveled, but we didn't create new accounts. We don't have more people logging in for longer. We didn't increase revenue. There were no actual things that we look at on a daily basis to say we just made a successful move. We got people to play longer, but would they have still played? Like, did we give them something else to do, or did we add to what they had to do?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly the problem. There was no A to B. There was an A with a squiggly line saying, well, it could have been because of this. Yeah. But that's not good enough to make big decisions in the future. So, like, we did this big pushback of, like, we don't want to do events anymore because we don't have they don't move the needle at all. The things that move the needle are this, and this.
Yeah, they're very obvious. Like, you look at the metrics, very obvious.
But it's only because they're nuclear. Yeah, they're nuclear bombs going off. Like, you don't see the little gunshots. You just see nuclear bombs. It takes a nuclear bomb for you to notice anything in those systems. So, yeah, that's the problem there. And then even with the updated BI tools we got later on, they were so squirmy I mean, how often did we find mistakes and errors in it? I never trusted that. If you don't trust the BI tool to start off with, which I didn't, I'm shooting in the dark. Like, I have no idea. Like, in that case, then it becomes totally a thing where I'm like, hey, it's successful this month, and then next month when it's not, I just don't say anything because I can't prove or disprove why it was successful the previous month. So it's like, hey guys, look, we got a huge spike this month. Everybody's like, oh wow, great. And the next month when it drops, I'm like, yeah, the tool, I don't trust the tool. Like, I could totally give my own confirmation bias about when I was doing something. But anyway, yeah, that I would say that's the biggest thing. It's just engagement is not impossible to measure, but it has to be very carefully dialed in. And again, I think the best place I've ever seen that was at geocaching, and that's only because, you know, they had a mobile app and a website that was just every tiny little thing was being looked at and tracked. And not tracked as in like they're keeping track of you, but tracked like they're able to tell your behavior without sitting there and watching you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you remember, didn't we try for a little bit, try to get some kind of heat map thing for the website or something? Or didn't we get like heat maps?
We got heat maps for the community words.
They did like a heat map thing for the website at one point too. Which was
we didn't call it heat map. Well, when I started working on it, it wasn't called heat maps. But yeah.
You remember what it was called? Yeah, remember what it was called? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember what it was called. But it basically looked and showed you where the places where people mostly hovered around on pages.
Bullet points I used and images.
Yes, and that's what I used when we did like the buy web page.
Yeah.
I was able to look at that and go, oh wow, like people clicked. They didn't click on they clicked on the videos, and they click on like this one other thing, but beyond that, they don't really click on anything. They don't click on the link to go to the store. So, you know, why have a store? Like, store link is just cluttering the page up. Then, like, get rid of it. Or the opposite, right? They don't click on anything but the store link. That's all they give a shit about is buying the thing from the page. Why do this giant unveiling page for 4 weeks if the only thing they give a shit about is what's the item I can buy out of it? Then I just do one single landing page. It shows you a big picture with all kinds of great images or a magazine spread of swimsuits or something that shows you what it's going to look like. That's how we landed on that. We did that one time as an experiment, and I was able to attribute something like, I can't say, a large amount of money to that page because I specifically got tracking hooks going from that magazine spread page all the way to the store and looking for to see if they could complete purchases. And I could see I could say that page led to this many dollars. And maybe those people would have bought it otherwise, but the fact that they came to that page and then they immediately went and bought and completed a transaction right after seeing that, to me says that page sold them on it. Like, maybe they were thinking about it, but they went to that page first. They didn't go straight to the store to buy the thing. They came to the page to look at all the pictures, and then they went and bought it. So maybe it wasn't the only reason they bought it, but it sure as shit helped it. So that kind of tracking you would need everywhere. Lucky pointed out earlier, I was going to say, we were talking about like we were talking about like dollar microtransactions and things like that. And he said, look at mobile apps. $2 mobile app makes people clench, but blowing $24.95 EMP on a golden box is like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. Totally true. In fact, I know you guys all probably remember when the first App Store launched for iOS from Apple, I remember articles going up where people would be like, 99-cent apps. If you've priced your app higher than 99 cents, nobody would fucking buy it. Same people that wouldn't buy an app or a game or something for 99 cents because it was $1.99, they wouldn't buy it, are the same people that would go that morning to Starbucks and buy a $4 or $5 coffee. But the idea that an app that they might use every day for the next couple months left them in such a crazy state of fear of buyer's remorse that they would just like analysis paralysis. They would just sit on it and never decide whether or not I did it. I did the same fucking thing. When I read those articles, I was like, this is crazy. It is absolutely right. I should just, like, every 99-cent app that I want, if I think I'm going to use it for one day, fucking buy it. It's going to last me longer than a cup of coffee that I'm going to buy for 4 times that amount. But for some reason, something about buying that cup of coffee and taking it out of the store and buying this digital thing for 99 cents, there was this in my brain was not connecting those two as being similar to each other in any way. Like, I don't own this. I can't put this app in my house. I can't go put it on a shelf in my bedroom. I can do it with a cup of coffee if I want, but it's a physical thing that I'm getting, and that's something that I don't have with that. So yeah, it's crazy that people would be like, I just cannot handle a $2 app, but then they'll spend $25 in EMP, which is, I think the point here was that it was a $2 of real world money versus $24.95 in fake currency that is literally $24.95 that you spent to get that thing. You totally disconnect from it. So it removes that paralysis of, if Apple came up with some weird, hey, it's Apple bucks, right? And then now it's $1 equals 1 Apple buck, and then I get 500 Apple bucks. It happens when I buy a gift card, right? I get a gift card at Christmas time. I'll buy gift cards, right? I'll buy Apple gift cards specifically because at most you'll ever see them discounted as 15%. So I just buy them because that's 15% off in the store, basically, right? I spend $85 and get a $100. Yes, exactly. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. People that wouldn't buy it when it was $60, but they'll spend $500 a month on it because they're being microtransacted. That's why they're being tricked by specifically. But say Apple came up with Apple bucks, and just like my gift card where I spend $85 but I get $100 worth of credit, I don't even fucking think twice about what I buy with that money. Now, it's literally real world money that I spent in a gift card. I put money on that gift card. And then as soon as it hit the gift card, it wasn't like it was real money anymore. Now it's just like, oh, cool. $50 for that mobile app? Sure. It's not real. It's not coming out of my account. Well, it did, Sean. You moron. It came out 3 months ago when you bought the gift card. It is real money. But in my head, I've disconnected it. It's not real anymore. It's off in the ether. So, yeah, that's a really good point about that. And then the other thing was, someone asked earlier. Sorry, I want to get this because it's getting late. Yeah, the motivation. How do I stay motivated? I fucking love what I do. There is no other answer for it. I love what I do. I love solving problems, and I love working with creative people. Maybe there's other careers that are similar that would make me feel just as fulfilled, but I stay motivated. Now I stay motivated at my new job because I work on physical product, which is my new motivation.
Well, hold on. Let's wrap this up the proper way. Let's go through the steps. We're skipping ahead.
Oh, okay. Shit. Sorry.
We spent a lot of time on the games you played. We spent a lot of time on TERA, but the true story of SeanDynamite at ExEME was there came a point and you transitioned to closers. So what was that?
Mm-hmm.
Was there just a lot of challenges and baggage from TERA? You needed something new? Because one of the things I always heard in the industry is never leave a product manager on a product for more than 2 years. Kick that fucker off, get him on something else. You always need, like, this guy's going to burn out and get destructive.
Yeah.
Was that
just so you know, your microphone has gotten kind of distorted. I don't know if it went really loud or something, but
I
just so you
got
know.
real close to it. Yeah, I think the mic.
Okay.
I think the mic is dying. I've got another one on order.
Oh.
Chat, let me know if the audio sounds like poo.
Yeah. Let me know. For me, I mean, I can still understand you. I just want to let you know. So I will say yes. Okay, there was an amount of burnout. You can only run the marathon for so long, right? Eventually, you're gonna get tired. Mm-hmm. And TERA is a marathon product. It's a marathon product. It is not It is no small. Every build, I just don't think people understand. I wish everybody had to. It's like a tour of duty, man. Everybody should have to do a month on that game just to see what it takes to get one build of that game out. One build. No thrills, no chills, no thrills, baby. Just 1 month of build A arrives. We get it, test it, patch it, get all the products created for it, and we push it out. Sounds so easy, but it was a 60 to 70 hour a week job for 2 people, 3 people sometimes, for a year and a half. It was tired, man. I got tired. I got real tired. And I think other people could see it. After the Zine code thing and everything happened with Proxy, I think I took such a beating after that, or during that period, that everyone could kind of see that I was just tired. I was starting to really, like, it was becoming, how do I say? I guess I was becoming not jaded at all. I wasn't jaded with it. Just become kind of mechanical. It was no longer. It's the same as everything else in my career. Keeping people 2 years on a product, I don't know about all that. I think you can stay with a job. I guess I was at different positions at NCSoft, but I was at NCSoft for whatever I was there for. 8 years, whatever, 7 years. But for me, I can't. I got to keep things fresh in some way. It all needs to lead somewhere. And I think, again, coming into a product so late in its life cycle, it's already gone through those. It's gone through all those weird refreshes and all those different things. So you kind of fall into it, and you're just like, okay, not maintenance mode, but I don't want to be in maintenance mode either. I'm not ready in my career to just settle down and be like, all right, cool. I'm just going to go on. I'm putting this shit in autopilot, and I'm just cruising until the end here, till I retire. Just never been it's not my style, and it's not my thing. I know people who change jobs every year. I know people who've stayed at companies for 10 years and still love where they are. So I was asked if I wanted to move to closers. Actually, I don't even know if I was asked. I think I was told, hey, this is what we're thinking we're going to do. What do you think about it? And I said, always looking for a new challenge, always ready to try something different. I think also my personality, when we get to work, when I really get into something, I am kind of a control freak, and I get a little crazy, and I probably get a little hard to work with for people who don't work closely with me, who don't understand that that's not my normal way of attacking things. But I think there may have been some other folks that probably weren't super keen on working with me anymore.
Ooh, drama.
Yeah, but not anybody close to us. I mean, I think at least people thought like maybe that I was so. I had tried enough stuff, and I had tried all these things, and I had finally made my mind up about certain things and made decisions that they thought were not maybe the right direction for the game, possibly, or I don't know. It's just I just needed something new, and I was happy to take on a new challenge and work with a new developer and work with a different experience, and that all felt great to me. So I said, sure, I'll try Closers, and it was a very fucking different game. Very different game. Completely different set of responsibilities. I would have to say much more product manager feeling than TERA.
Yeah.
TERA still felt like a live producer job.
Yeah.
Whereas Closers was more about work with the developer to come up with strategies on items that people want to see, give feedback on costumes, there was more of it felt more of like I felt more of like a product manager. I was managing the product versus
don't get in the chat. That's a separate meta thing.
So I think I just got to that point where I was ready for just a different challenge, and I was ready for something that felt a little bit more like product management too. And again, always in the back of my mind, there was always that whole kind of, is this really the kind of game I want to work on? Like, there were so many great people in the community and so many awesome, like our player council. I mean, everybody was so fucking awesome to work with. But when the chips were down, I could see that a lot of people were exasperated with the job and the game and some of those kind of things. And so I just felt like I had done all I could really do to help that game.
Yeah.
And it was just time to move on. So I was pretty happy to get a new challenge. And it was fun and it was different and it gave me a lot of other perspectives and mass as far as working with a developer that was not part of the DNA.
Yeah.
Right. Again, TERA has a lot of baggage that comes with TERA has baggage, not me. TERA has baggage that comes with it just because of the way that the company was formed based around it. Whereas Closers was completely third-party developer, has no need to try to blow smoke up my ass. I got no need to blow smoke up their ass. There's no ego of us trying to stroke each other's egos. It's all like we're all in it to win it together. Let's just do what we need to do. And so that felt kind of refreshing to get into that. Unfortunately, it came into a time when the game was, they had just made these huge content announcements. It was in kind of a free fall mode at that point. So
we had pushed content so aggressively for the first year. You came in on the second year when that content had already been used. Yeah.
It was already been used. It was supposed to be stuff that would have been dragging out, but yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, but Mr. SeanDynamite, I closed the Closer servers on Wednesday.
Really? Wow. So now it's with Nautic?
Now it's with Nautic. We transferred our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook over to them. Facebook transfer is such a, oh my God. That's a thing.
Transferring a Facebook page?
Yeah. Transferring.
Yeah.
Facebook doesn't make it easy, man. They didn't make it easy. The funny thing was Instagram didn't even care who I was. They're like, who you can access the account. I don't care. I'm
pouring out some for the homies.
See it. So yeah,
for my Closer servers.
As of Wednesday, 5 p.m., en masse no longer services Closers. The servers were down. I cried a little. I went into the player council. I was like, hey man, it's sad to see you guys go, but I'm happy I know where you're gonna go. It's gonna be great. And then I went into the Discord general. I was like, hey, blah blah blah, and I got tears, man. There were tears the whole time. It was weird. Sunsetting game for the first time.
Hey, man, it's I'm telling you, as a person, I have my own kid, and these games are not just games to us. These are your livelihood. These are we live. I mean, people who play these games play them just as much as we work on them sometimes. But those are just the super hardcores. Imagine it's the same feeling they have. If their favorite game got shut down, they would have the exact same feeling. They'd be very upset, very sad about it. They put so much investment into it. You've invested your time. The only real investment we have in life, Keaton, is time. That is it. Everything else is extraneous to time, right? So, I'm trying to figure out where my son is. Not quite sure where he's at right now.
It's 11:30. Do you know where your kids are?
He might be asleep in the other room. Actually, we stayed up late last night to watch The Mandalorian, so I kept him up till 1 a.m. with me.
So
well,
you
anyway,
it was your time to be done with TERA. You moved to Closers, but then you came in one day and you're like, Keaton, I'm telling you, before I've told anybody else, don't tell anybody else. I got my dream job.
I did.
And your dream job is not in the video game industry anymore.
No, but it's still in games.
Still in games.
Good point that it's still in games. Because I have found the amount of similarities are far more than I thought there would be between video games, and I'm working in board games now, which sounds like a roll back, but I work for Funko Games, which is Funko Games is actually a division of it's a division of Funko that was just bought out. They were previously a board game invention company. So board games, very similar to video games, are usually a developer, designer, inventor, and then a publisher. So you have publishers like Wonderforge, Ravensburger, Hasbro, Big G Games, like a lot of they're publishers. And then you have inventors, and those could be Those could literally be you, Keaton. You could come up with an idea for a game, and you could come out tomorrow and say, I'm going to them and I came up with this game. I have, here's, here's these handmade cards that I made, and here's these, here's these tokens that I made, and I want to make this game, and I'm going to show you how the game is made, and then I want you guys to help me create the artwork and make it beautiful, but I'm going to come to you with it. So we have a group of game designers that are literally that. They're guys who come up with the mechanics and the goals and the gameplay for how to play a game, and they do it very rudimentary. It's a prototype that's based off of like, okay, the object of the game is to get this to the far side of this hex pattern board that we've created, right? And I got these little hex cards that we're going to lay out with every turn, and you get to do this thing, and here's how order of operations in a turn. And they start off small with a mechanic, and they grow it out, right? Just like you would in a feature in a video game. You'd grow a feature from a basic idea into a prototype phase, a proof of concept into a prototype, and then you begin to flesh out the pieces of the prototype, and so you have a final game. So what happened was so back when I was laid off, when I was telling the story very earlier on this evening, hours ago, I was in that 6-7 month period before I got hired at NMAS. 2 months before I interviewed at NMAS and got hired in 2017, I went and interviewed for a product manager job, a digital product manager job at Funko. This was working on, at the time, they were fleshing out a digital team that was going to work on mobile apps and games and all kinds of stuff. They were trying to grow Funko from just a toy company. So I didn't get hired, obviously. I came to NMAS and got hired 2 months later. Very early on at NMAS, another job came up, and they remembered me, and the recruiter called me and said, hey, I got another job here I think you might be interested in. And I said, okay, cool. Tell me about it. Did a couple phone interviews. Did I go in and do a physical interview? I think I just did 2 phone interviews with it. And then it just turned out that it didn't sound like it was up my alley. And so I was kind of like, I kind of bowed out of it. I don't think they wanted me, and I didn't want them. So it was pretty mutual, I think. And then, but man, I told you earlier, I worked at Toys R Us when I toured in that band. Right? I've collected toys since I was a kid. I still collect toys. I have some Funkos behind me, but that's
people have been noticing. Yeah.
Nothing compared to, like, that's just, I mean, these are just what I've gotten in the last couple weeks.
The first thing you did when we hopped on this call was to show me the 2 figures that you're painting.
Oh yeah, well those are that's my Warhammer figures.
That was the first thing you did. Hey, check it out.
Look at my Warhammers, man. So then, the end of last year, another product manager job popped up, working on the mobile app for Funko. And, it's kind of hard for me as someone who their entire life has been devoted to like pop culture and toys and video games to not pursue a toy company for a job when it's up in front of me. And again, working on a mobile app for their Funko collection thing, not really a thing, that's not my dream job. But like I said earlier, sometimes you just got to get into the company. And once you're in, it's easier to laterally move around inside the company. But it's getting in sometimes is the hard part. So I was like, hey, I can work on a mobile app. I've worked on mobile apps before. I've been a product manager before. I'm very familiar with pop culture and toys. I'm very, very, very familiar with collectors and price guides and things like that. So I was like, I think I'm checking all the boxes here. So I went and interviewed in August, early August. Late July, early August, right? And I didn't get the job. And it was one of those. I nailed that fucking interview, man. Nailed it up and down. I knew it. Job was mine. It's like a 4 or 5 hour interview. Went up to their HQ. Called me a couple days later. Sorry, gave it to somebody else. I was very, very upset about that.
Like you said earlier, anytime you thought you nailed the interview, you didn't get the job.
Fucking telling you. So then, like 2 weeks later, I get an email from like Indeed or one of these places, which is probably how I got to the Funko job in the first. I probably clicked through something and they tracked me, so they started sending me like, "Hey, here's more Funko jobs. You might be interested." And it was like, like warehouse stocker and stuff, and I was like, "No, I'm not interested in being a warehouse person. Thank you." Not that there's anything wrong with that job, but not my. I did that. I already done that job. I did that job 25-ish years ago. I'm good to go. And it said game producer. And I was like, "Oh, get the fuck out of here. Like that you got to be kidding me, a game producer." So I called up the recruiter guy I knew and said, "Hey, I just saw this job and I'm super interested in." And he said, "I'm actually not handling that job. My assistant Cassie is. I'll let her know." And so she got a hold of me and she said, "Oh, it was international game producer." That was even more. I was like, "Get the fuck out of here. This is like the conglomeration of everything in my life, in my career." We talked earlier. I worked at a toy store, right? I did localization after that. I worked in games as a producer after that. I was like, your title is the last 3 things I've done with my career. So I got on the phone with her and she said, she told me about the job and she said, "Okay, it's working on board games." I was like, "Okay, I'm interested. You've got me already," because last time I worked on a physical product that went on a shelf was Ion in 2009. Everything else since then. I guess Guild Wars 2 had a box as well, but by that point in time, most people already moved digital. So I was like, "That's interesting. That's very cool." Go into a store and see your own things on the shelf. And then I really got interested when she was like, "Yeah, they used to be called this company called Forest Pruzan Creative. And they've worked on games over the years." And so I went to their website and looked at it. And it was, I shit you not, dude, it was like 200 games. And I was like, I used to stock these fucking games, man. These guys worked on Cranium. They worked on like multiple versions of Cranium. And they didn't just work on it. They invented the games. They were inventors and designers and did all the art, all the creative and everything. And so she's talking to me on the phone, telling me about the job. I'm like, "All right, this sounds fucking amazing." And then she's like, "Okay, now I'm going to tell you how much they're going to pay and don't hang up." And so she told me how much they paid. And I was like, "Yeah, that ain't going to work." I was like, "I'm a single dad. I got a kid that goes to, he's got school, got everything else." I was like, I can't do it for that. And they were like, "Yeah." They were like, "Look, we know." They were like, "It's you're a bit of a unicorn because you check all the boxes." Like they want a game producer, but they also want someone with international experience. They want someone with localization experience. They want somebody who's familiar with toys and games. Like they have enough things to where they've really created a pretty niche job. And you check all of the boxes, and you're the first person in months that has checked all the boxes. And so I was like, "All right, they're making me feel pretty good." So I'm waiting to be let down for sure.
Of course.
Right? "Yeah, you're perfect for the job. However, we're going to give it to somebody else because they have a college degree and you don't," which has happened to me a couple times. So I was like, "Okay." And like, "Well, she's like, I want you on the job." She's like, "I think you'd be perfect for this. So I'm going to get a hold of them and I'm going to talk to them." So what I didn't know is Funko Games had just bought Funko had just bought Forest Pruzan and turned them into Funko Games like 8 months before. They didn't have a game out yet. In fact, they were still finishing games they were working on for previous clients and had to finish those games first. But they were working on a game for Funko called Funkoverse. That was how the relationship got started. Is Funko was working with Forest Pruzan as a client, as an agency to create Funkoverse for them, and they're based out of Seattle, right here in the University District, and Funko is up in Everett, and so they were local, and they created this game, and they loved the game that they made, and so I don't know how it happened, but they just bought them, right? So they had outright bought them, and it had just gone down. Nothing had been released yet. In fact, I think Funkoverse came out while I was finishing up after I put my notice in, and I got my first copy of it from Barnes & Noble in downtown. I went and bought it because I was like, okay, I guess next up probably a phone interview, and then probably 12 hours of in-person interviews, and they were like, hey, so Jay and DC, who are the general manager of Funko Games and the director of the production team, director of product, want to interview you in person at their office, 1 hour interview. I was like, okay. Like, this is like the antithesis of all the Amazon interviews and everything else I'd been doing over the last few years. So I went to their office, and it was this weird little, it's this strange little place that's upstairs from an old video store. And it was like, this is so not what I was expecting, you know, coming from everybody trying to basically be like Google or something like that, where it's like huge snack kitchens and like, you know, modern, super modern aesthetics and quiet rooms and all these different, you know, all this bullshit that a lot of these tech companies are, you know, trying to do to rope people into never going home from their job. This just felt like it was a homegrown thing. It was like 35 people or something, you know, and I'm looking at all the games they put out. I'm like, holy shitballs, man. Like, I walked down the Target aisle, and like a third of the games in the Target aisle right now are games that these guys invented. That's crazy to me, you know? So I go to interview, and it goes really well. They're just really likable people, and they're really nice. And I can tell all they're like focusing in on is if my personality will mesh with them. You know what I mean? Like, I could tell that there wasn't a lot of questions about, well, how would you go about handling this situation? It was just kind of like, you know, you've got enough experience. Would you fit in here? They can look on paper and see I've done localization stuff, so they know that part of it. So the interview goes well. I leave feeling okay. Not 100%, because I'm kind of like, I think I was so burned just weeks before that I was not letting my hopes get up, but god damn was I hoping so. Like, I deep down, like, I was trying to trick myself into being like, no, you don't care, Sean. You don't care. Don't pretend like you care. You don't care.
Yeah, I think you told me I'm probably not going to get it, but just so you know.
Yeah, I told you I'd interviewed there. Yeah, that's right. Right. So they called me the next day and offered me the job, and they were able to offer me equal pay. I was willing to take a pay cut, to be honest, just because the job seemed so fucking cool. And they hired me to do the international editions for Funkoverse. They had just gone through the nightmare of putting out French, German, and Spanish editions with nobody there ever having done anything with localization before. And so they were in was it a fucking pickle it was in. And they had 2 more that were coming out right then.
Damn it, none of this text fixed on the box.
Nope. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, all that shit. But so I started working in the international team, and I came up with I was working with budgeting for the next year based off of word counts, and I was kind of going back to what I was doing at NCSoft back when I moved to Seattle. To be honest, it was a lot of working with external vendors and things like that. And yeah, so I kind of felt like that's where I was going to be. I was going to be doing that, and so I put my notice in at at NMass, and was very I was very sad. It was the first time, I think, like, when I left NCSoft, I was not sad. It was like, whew, I'm ready to go on to something else.
The reason I wanted to get to this in is because this is when I wanted to loop back to the first question that we got from Bo. How do you maintain that motivation? I didn't want to do it at the time because it would have been just a part of the story. Where the whole story is, like, you went through TERA, you went through closers, but you have this history before ExEME, and now you got out. So all those little bits, what's the secret? What's the secret that you've taken from all of that? Or is it always different based on the situation?
Man, the secret is you have to find something in your life, and not everybody gets this. And I recognize that I am so fucking lucky to have found something that checks all my boxes. Right? It makes me feel important. Right? I have that need. I recognize it's probably not the healthiest thing in the world. I have to feel important. I have to feel like people are counting on me. Me alone. I am the fucking linchpin. I need to be the linchpin, or I feel useless. Probably not the best thing, but that's how I have to feel. I have to feel important. I also, maybe it's not, and maybe I'm miswording it. Maybe it's not that I have to feel important. I have to feel, I want to feel like the one that everyone can count on. I want to be the superhero that comes through at the last minute when necessary. I also don't like to be pigeonholed into one thing for a super long time. So this job allows me to work on a game, release the game, and move on to the next game. It's very, no two things will ever be alike. I might gain knowledge and experience doing those things, but they're never going to be the same. That's cool. So that's diversification, right? Every game I work on will be a different type of game. Even the exact same game. I'm actually working possibly on doing something with another very large, insane licensor.
NDA.
That's related to the Marvel game that I work on
NDA.
right now, but it won't be the same thing. It'll literally be a completely different game. It'll be a completely different process, a completely different licensor. So it's got that newness. It'll always have that newness, right? It's about toys, as I've said numerous times. I love toys. I always have. I always will. It's something that I've always been passionate about, and I have a lot of knowledge about, and I understand the collector mentality. I can say at this job, I understand our customers better than any job I've ever had because I have been one of these customers for 40 years. I've been them. I am them. So I know what they're looking for. I know what they think is cool. I know when they think somebody's cheating them or doing something cheap, right? Like buying Star Wars figures, you know when they're reusing a fucking sculpt. You know that it's just being cheap, right? So I have that. It's games. I get to make games for people. I get to make games for kids. I get to make all this cool shit that that I would have wanted when I was a kid. I get to relive my youth by making things for kids today. I get to make things for adults. I get to make party games for people. I get to do this fucking insanely cool thing. It's so niche. How many people can say they work at a board game company in the world, right? So that's kind of, I think that's the motivation. The motivation is to gotta find the nugget of whatever it is that drew you to want to do that. If you're just doing it to do a job, then come in and do it, clock in and clock out, and don't take that shit home with you, because that's just gonna fuck your life up.
Don't work in the game industry if that's that's right there. That's what he said.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. You have to want to live, breathe, die, sleep, dream, all of that. You want all of that, right? That has to be your love and your passion. And I hope everybody can find something like that. Man, I can say that it took me 48 years to find my forever job. Even though it's probably only like, what, at this point, like another 12, 13 years before I have to retire. This is it, though. This is the job, and I can see myself being here. This is the job. I could never see this job getting old or boring or not challenging or, yeah. It's just it's that's the motivating factor for me. Getting them, and oh, I'm sorry, I left out the most important part of all of this. It is creative. Producers at this company, a producer is not just the guy who managed the timelines. I am literally writing content for the game. I am literally helping design characters. I'm helping design game boards. I'm helping design concepts. I'm helping build concepts. I'm running play testing. I'm in charge of releasing files to a factory. I'm in charge of working with a factory. I'm in charge of helping design miniatures. I have an army of artists, graphic designers, and 3D sculptors that are helping me and the game designer as a team create a game from nothing. You know? So that's literally the only thing I've ever wanted in my job, is to feel like I am making an impact. I come into work on Monday morning, and on Friday when I'm done and I put everything to sleep, I'm like, I did X, Y, and Z this week, and I changed the course of this thing that is going to be on Target shelf on June 21st next year on an end cap at Target. I made that change. There's a commercial for Marvel Battle World that has my figures that I have here, that I had here at the house, that I had to package up and ship to the advertising agency. My figures are in the commercial because they needed a set of figures, and I had the only complete set. So, and I'm talking with, a couple months ago, I got a document that's basically all of the upcoming Marvel TV series and movies, like plot lines and stories, and being in the know of these things that are coming. And it's just like, it's so much, it's responsibility mixed with creativity mixed with a love for the fucking, and I work with the nerdiest fucking nerds you've ever nerded with, and I love it. I feel like I found my people. I could never say anything too nerdy for this group of people, and they are just as passionate and like primo fucking games, man. Take a look at that Back to the Future game we just put out. I played that thing when it was a prototype last November, and I was like, dude, this thing's going to be huge. And it is. We got a letter from Robert Zemeckis last month saying what an incredible fucking game he thought it was, and how honored he was to have something that was so closely tied to what their vision was for the original Back to the Future movie. Dude, I got a picture on my, here, look at, I don't know if I sent you this. I got this picture sent to me the other day. Oh God, where'd it go? It's nothing but dick pics.
Yeah, I know. Don't show those. I get banned. I get banned for those. That's the OnlyFan content. When we do the OnlyFan interview, that's you can show all of them.
Wait, where'd it go? No, but for real, I have a picture in here that I was going to show you because I was like,
Sean, it is 11:59. We've
I know
gone
it is,
4 hours.
We're going 4 more.
Chat, if you've got any questions, hit us with them. This is SeanDynamite. He was the TERA PC North America product manager for a couple years.
Dude, that's AC Slater from Saved by the Bell.
Mario Lopez. Yeah.
He's playing my game.
There you go.
He's playing Marvel Battle World. That is my game that I have printouts in here of these cards when we were still designing them. Mario Lopez, dude. I've hit the pinnacle. AC Slater likes my game. I can quit.
Chat,
oh my God.
Chat, I don't know what else we could possibly talk about. We have to be done. It's been 4 hours. We have to be done. Are there any questions? I assume there can't be. SeanDynamite, TERA product manager from 2 years ago, was product manager for a couple years. The guy that did Argon Assault and said no along with me to Murder Mystery, was there from DMCA and Proxy.
Yeah, keep the people at the bottom there. Responsible.
DMCA Proxy. Are we out? Are we out?
That makes me think about, that's another piece of advice. Don't DMCA people. It really does not. It does not make you the most favorite people to everybody. It does not. Increase your social value. Does not go up. I've talked about
it. You guys can go check the VODs. Go scroll down. There's a YouTube link there. You can go check the YouTube. I've talked about TERA Proxy and DMCA. It's been said. Sean, thank you very much for doing this. While we've been talking, I came up with a couple ideas. I would love to have you as one of the regulars. Coming and doing some stuff. And I got some ideas. We'll talk about it later. I need to start spinning up content because my game shut down Wednesday. TERA PC shuts down when, chat? November 9.
November 9. That's a week. That's about a week and a couple days from now, huh?
It's almost over. It's almost all done. EME is going to turn the lights off in a couple months.
That's crazy. So what's the delay there? I'm just out of curiosity. So is there other things that need to be still shut down after that, or is that the last one?
Well, I mean, there's like the business side of things, but then there's the office side of things. So there are the people.
Oh, just show you on the office.
So like, transferring TERA console transferred earlier. That was easy. That's going right back to the developer. Closers, again, also easy because it went back to the developers. TERA PC, hard because it's going to another third-party publisher. So it's, contract bouncing through, kind of circle thing. So that one's a little bit harder. beyond that, the time is basically, you know, we have like our servers in Chicago. We have our office space, all those little contracts, things like that. So it's just like once we terminate all of our services, and like right now, like Closers is shut off, but we're still migrating the data. Closers comes up at Nautic November 5th. So we still have a couple days until they can bring their servers up. We're still transferring.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then when that comes up,
sense.
like, did everything transfer right? If things didn't transfer right, that's still our tech team needs to work on that. Transferred socials, but if they have any other issues, we haven't turned our Discord off. We still have our forums. So there's just so much.
I can just say that in that transfer process, did anyone ask if they'd ever done that before and if it took a longer time? Because I remember server merges for Closers. When I first came over to Closers, we did a server merge my first few weeks.
Yep.
And I remember we were about 24 hours into it, and we'd all been awake for about 36 hours. And I remember someone saying, "Man, someone from not on our team, somebody else who was there said."
It was hard in somewhere else too.
Man, I sure hope this doesn't go as bad as it did in China.
Yeah.
And I went,
what?
What happened in China? And they were like, oh yeah, we had to roll all this stuff back. I was like, no one said anything about this prior to right now when we are, yes, at that point when shit has gone sideways. Oh my goodness.
All right. We've been doing a lot of work. In fact, we did something really, really cool. And it took a long time. So EMP. So one of the things you were talking about before, one of the reasons that TERA, or one of the reasons EME has a virtual currency is because when you spend $200 to buy EMP, you can go spend that in Closers or TERA. So the reason that we don't realize it until you spend it is because I don't know where that money's supposed to go. If you buy $200 of EMP, TERA doesn't get it until you spend it, and then we count it. So that leaves a big question. If you're a InMass account holder and you have an account for Closers and TERA, where does your EMP go?
Where's your EMP go? Yeah.
What we did is we are going to provide that EMP if we shut down game account creation. So you can go create an InMass account, but when you hit the play button in the launcher, that creates your game account. So if you've only ever hit play on TERA, you only have a TERA game account. But if you ever hit play on Closers, you now also have a Closers game account. So how do you distribute that EMP? We don't want to put it on the player because there's already a lot on the player. So what we did is we're paying both companies. So everybody that has a Closers and a TERA account, if they spent $200 in EMP, if they've literally purchased EMP, then we are giving $200 to both publishers.
That's really cool, man. That's, again, of all the game companies I've ever worked for, this is probably the only one I would ever it's cool. It doesn't surprise me as much as you might think it would, just because I know Sam and everybody involved, and I know how important it is to them as game players that they treat everybody properly. And no one at NMAS ever made me feel like I was ever treated improperly, so it doesn't surprise me at all that they would do something like that for the players too. And I hope everyone realizes that that's, I mean, not to keep disparaging EA, but I will for the rest of my life. Had that been EA that was shutting that game down, they would have been like, fuck you, thanks for the money. Because that's what they do. And I am so proud to have done my time there. When I left there, just like when Denominator left and other folks left, there was a lot of always conversations about like, hey man, go out and learn what you can learn and come back and bring it to us. And that was really like, that's never been like that was never a thing that I ever really considered until I left NMass, where it was like, hey, maybe I actually will do that. Like maybe I actually will. Like if I ever do need to come back, I know I can come back here and I'll feel comfortable coming back here. Like these people are, continue to be the kind of people that I want to associate with.
Now,
so
there is one problem, Mr. SeanDynamite. I don't know if you've done this yet. I just posted a link in the chat. Due to privacy regulations, due to things like the GDPR regulations, which are absolutely important because they do protect our users' privacy. These things are really, really important. They do put a roadblock into things. Chat, you got to know. And SeanDynamite, if you haven't done it already, you got to go to our InMass website. You got to go through the migration process because we cannot migrate your personal data, including your game data, to either GameForge or Nautic unless you consent to it.
Yep. I already did it.
Link. You did it? Okay, good.
I did it after we talked on the stream like a week and a half ago, and you mentioned it, and I said, okay, I'm going to go do that right now.
Okay. Chat, make sure you're doing it. Chat, make sure you're reaching out
Do
to
it.
your own socials. Go to your
Do it.
Discords, go to your Twitter. Reach out to friends and family that you've played TERA or closers with. Make sure every one of them know that they need to go do this account migration. We don't want any player left behind. Your EMP and your character progression is going to transfer for both of our titles to both of the new publishers. Go get it done, please, please, please. SeanDynamite, thank you for stopping by tonight. Thanks for this long. You're the longest. You now have the record for a Guff Talk. Guffy Talk? I think it's Guffy Talk.
Guffy Talk. I like that. Dude, you gotta totally change this thing to Guffy Talk.
That's literally what it is in OBS, Guffy Talk.
Oh, I love it. Love it. All right, man. Hey, this won't be the last time. Thank you so much. And thanks. Hey, I wanted to also say, I wanted to say on the stream, I wanted to say thanks to Lucky and Pez and Counterpoint, all the player council folks that I worked with on TERA, all the player council folks I worked with over at Closers too. I'm very sad to think that this thing might have just gone away, and it's hurtful. I'm hopeful for everybody, but yeah, everybody was so fucking nice to me and always so kind to me, even when I probably was making the most unpopular decisions of their career, of my career even sometimes. But you know, I always respected everybody there, and I never once thought I felt like anybody was doing anything because they had some personal vendetta against me. Even when they always yelled "Bring back Tonka" at me or whatever, they would yell at me. It never mattered.
Well, Tonka's going to be cutting this interview into a YouTube interview at some point.
So guys, see, it all comes full circle. It's like one big family anyway. But no, really, yeah, and yeah, thanks to all of you guys, and thanks to you, Keaton, for always being a pretty killer fucking dude to be around. So I hope this blows up for you, because I could listen to you talk forever. You're literally the only person I've logged into on Twitch and just watched just bullshit and play games. This is not my realm. Again, I'm 48, folks. Am I, or 49? Oh my god, I think I turned 49. No, I'm 48.
I'm 43.
48 now.
I'm 43.
Yeah. I'm 48, guys. I never thought I would be as still playing with games and toys at this age, but goddamn, am I happy to be doing it.
Well, I'm going to need people to madly start throwing their Twitch Primes at me to start giving me those free Twitch Primes so that I can keep doing things. I think, because I got to buy a new mic. You guys hear this thing. This is trash. I got this dumpster. I think what more likely is going to happen is I'm going to burn every bridge in the game industry I can, and everybody's going to reference these things. So I remember we were looking at somebody once for TERA, and they said they played the game, and we went and checked their account, and it was a bunch of racism in their chat log. Like, people go check these things. That was 10 years ago. Now, like, it's going to be easy to just take my name, search it, find me on Twitch, and go, oh, look at this guy. He's burned every bridge. No, not hiring. I think this is blacklisting me. If anything, Twitch is going to blacklist me from the industry.
Well, I don't know about that. I know people who've done nothing but fail upwards their entire career, so if you can get on that boat, man, that's the boat to fucking be on. I watch people fail upwards constantly. This guy sucks. Promote him. Get him the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Make him somebody else's problem for a while.
Absolutely. All right, man. Have a good night. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. SeanDynamite. Hey, how cool is it that you found the GuffyBear YouTube channel? I mean, that's, wow, 1 in a million. Thanks for being here. And if you hit like, subscribe, and comment to one of my videos, my ego really, really explodes. It just inflates. You have that power. That's something that you can do today to make yourself and me feel good.